Listen up, Gotham. This is Batman. Tune into the Bat Fan Addict podcast with Sammy Warm Hands. And if you don't, I'll be coming for you.
Hey everybody, it's the Dark Knight of Rap, Sammy Warm Hands, and this is the Bat Fan Addict podcast. As always, I'll be joined by my co-hosts, Ben and Evan, and we have to shout out our longtime friends and sponsors right here in Eugene, Oregon, Radar Toys. You can go to radartoys.com, get free shipping in the U.S., and save an additional 10% using our code BATFANPOD. All right? Now, if I am a little bit gravelly and low, I was losing my voice a little bit the day we recorded this, so don't take that for a lack of enthusiasm because we're diving in to one of our favorite universes once again. That is the White Knight, the Murphyverse, whatever you want to call it. This is the spinoff written by Katana Collins. Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn.
I forgot my notes, but I didn't have any, so that's all right.
Oh, no.
I had like 4 of them.
I didn't take notes, but I also forgot them.
I didn't read
but if it helps at all, I also didn't read the material. So.
There's always a specific order we do it in, and I never remember.
We're going to start with Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn. It's a very long title. 2020. This was written by Katana Collins. And if you're listening and going, why did he pronounce it that way? Because I DM'd her. I was like, I heard an interview with you and Sean both pronouncing your name differently. Can you help me out? I was like, is it like Katana the sword or is it like banana? And she's like, my family says banana. The rest of the world says katana.
I like this.
I'm like, okay.
I like the banana was your example. And she's like, yeah, banana. Yeah, my family says banana.
They literally call her banana.
Yeah, so
Katana banana.
Banana Collins. Story by Katana Collins and Sean Murphy. Artwork by Matteo Scalera. Colors by Dave Stewart. Letters by And World Design. Initial thoughts on White Knight Harley?
I'll piggyback on something I remember saying previously in that I just thought that it was so cool that Sean started and got the ball rolling on something that I thought was really cool. I thought what he made was really dope.
Yeah.
But then, however that works, the executives or the label or something sees the potential and they're like, yeah, that is cool. People really liked this.
Go for it.
Have some more, do some more stuff.
This can be its own world.
Yeah, because how many times do we see people who do something that could just be a one shot that ends up not being a one shot and turns into its own little side universe? That's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And pretty cool to me.
Usually it's like some planned thing.
Yeah.
It's like, we want you to spearhead our new universe so that
Exactly.
people can get into it who haven't read it.
Hellboy is like that in that he would have Mike doing the main storyline and this is the stuff that's really driving the story forward, but that was kind of like sporadic. And then he would have all of these, especially since
The
Hellboy.
BRPD and then the old stories.
Yep. And so you'd have these trade paperbacks that would have like 8 different short stories by 8 different artists or something. And it was totally cool because Hellboy just lends itself to that kind of, like, that's its universe. It's like Grimm's fairy tales or something, and there are all these little Hellboy side quests. But Hellboy is an independent title, which is a whole lot different than Sean and Batman and DC, So for Mike to have the freedom to do that makes sense. That's his baby. But Batman isn't Sean's baby. So pretty tight that they were like, yeah, buddy, go for it. Pick another guy who has similar art and you don't have to pull all the weight and do your thing on it.
Yeah, and what's starting to change my perspective on this a little bit now that it's kind of become the White Knight universe, I'm starting to appreciate this a little differently in that this is basically fan fiction.
Yeah.
Because it is so deeply referential and so like its own thing. I mean, a lot of these Black Label things like we're talking about are one-offs that are Elseworlds. They're not part of continuity, but
I think, like you say, it's the referential aspect that makes it like fan fiction-y, and not as a criticism or as a bad thing, but
I mean that is something I like. Yeah.
Because you could argue that anyone who's like, I love Batman, now I get to write it. Well, you're just writing fan fiction.
Exactly.
But it's that specific of like,
but he's embracing it.
Yeah, the nods to the animated series, just the nods to everything.
Yeah, it's cool. Again, just listening to like Sean and Clay go off on the animated series on their podcast, you know how much they love this shit, and so when you read it, it's only natural that you would be feeling that as well, that it's every artist's childhood dream to grow up and work on the main fucking Batman title. That's crazy, right? And this isn't it, but you're still getting like all of that excitement when you open it up of like, oh man, what if we go back to that scene from fucking that thing that blew my mind when I was a kid and re-explore that? It's just the excitement reads on the page for me. I like that a lot.
Which is pretty cool if you can make something like that come across.
Yeah.
I think that if that's perceivable to somebody, then like playing a show, you know, I want to project the kind of excitement that I hope that I will get back from people.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I'm going to put my passion on the page and I'm going to hope that it comes across.
Yeah.
And then to know that it actually lands is pretty cool.
Both with the conclusion of like the first chunk of the White Knight stories and then this, it kind of seems like his real dream and fantasy was to write Harley Quinn stories, or like to create a universe where she's the most important character, which is not bad, but that's like the unique twist of this universe. Because it's not just that she's so important, it's that like she's best friends with Batman.
Well, we talked about this before.
There's more than one version of her.
Like where he kept getting like, oh, Batman's arrested. Batman's fucking the enemy of the people in the first one. Batman's this and that. I was like, okay, so you love Batman clearly, but like, do you also hate Batman? Is that like the message we're supposed to take from this series, is that he is bad, like in a practical sense, and cannot work? Is that?
But
it's this terrible Wayne legacy and stuff. Like everything about this family
and
and
it's
this character.
specifically Batman because he seems to be okay with vigilantes.
Yeah, yeah.
With where this story goes, but it's just Batman himself is no good.
Yeah. I want to mention, nice to see you guys. Yeah. This is the first time, I think, since episode 8.
So the
that we've all been
overwhelming
together.
majority of these we've done distance.
On the phone,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
It's crazy. So
We'll see how this works.
Yeah, it's nice
This
to
might
see
be
you
the
guys.
last one again for a while.
Yeah, I'm thinking about taking another year and a half off, guys. Hope you don't mind.
I'll be outside.
So the story opens with a flashback to Joker and Harley first meeting. And this is not at Arkham. This is a total reimagining. It's at a club where she is a dancer. She flirts with him and makes him laugh. She like flips off her pole and onto his lap and makes some joke about Jack in the Box, you know, and he
means vagina.
Laughs about that.
I didn't even get that.
Then
I don't even get this.
The mob people that he's with walk by and bump into them and knock a drink onto her, and he gets super aggro on this guy, just like really fucking need to defend her honor, and she's like, it doesn't matter, this is my life, like fuck, this is every day, it's fine. And he's just like, no, fuck you, apologize to her, you know, and just like really raging out there.
Again, in this universe, Joker is Two-Face.
Yeah.
He's like half Two-Face. That whole like,
for sure,
I'm fucking crazy half the time is built in.
Yeah, he just pops off.
Yeah. And this is right as Batman crashes through the Tim Burton glass ceiling into a room. And they run for cover under a table while he takes on the mobsters. And it puts them in very close quarters, it seems, for the first time that they're face-to-face. There's like a tablecloth kind of covering them. It's a very private moment. You know, they're in their own little blanket fort. And, you know, it's just very intimate. And she remarks like, oh, well, your eyes and your skin, like, it's like you're two different people in one.
You might have circulation issues.
Yeah, it's a little sort of
Check your diet.
ham-fisted.
Yeah.
You look gross. Hey, are they under a square or circular table?
That's a good question.
There's two tables.
As you're describing, like, if this is a circular table, then the stand should exist in the middle. I don't think that circular
God.
tables usually have 4 legs.
I just don't believe it. It's not believable. It's not a believable
like,
world.
I mean, the camera angle,
Jeez.
like, how could they be so close if the
They look
the
like round
stand
tables.
wasn't- Yeah, exactly. It's, God. Somebody needs to hire me as, like, a visual editor. I like that right there, how you have, like, Jack is like, boonk, gone. And then in the very next one, Batman's like, boo, where'd he go? Hey,
Can I play?
yeah, hey, what are you guys doing under here?
And when he bails, he leaves his phone number on the Jack of Diamonds. Batman is like, yo, stay away from that motherfucker.
I like that. He's a slippery slope.
Bad news. We cut back to the present time, And the narration, we find that she's actually telling this to her babies as like a bedtime story, which in another context would be very sweet, telling you about how me and your dead dad met, who you will never get to meet, and like that's
shot him.
This is a nice story. Well, yeah.
In the fucking face.
This is the beginning of the story, not the
in
end.
a very weirdly perspective panel.
Callbacks,
They show us the panel again. That's
Like, oh, that was weird.
Who's on a ledge? Who's above?
Yeah. MC Escher did this one.
I mentioned that interview that I heard with the two of them on, it was on the Bat Force radio show a while back. Katana was saying that she was like kind of proud of her jokes, and Sean was like, yeah, I couldn't believe, like, you're making me laugh out loud. Like, you know, we said before, normally like a Joker thing, he'd be laughing at his own jokes, but like there's a couple times in these where I'm actually laughing at shit that Harley says. They had the like, why is a stripper like a rock? You skip the flat ones, or like there was apparently like dirtier versions of some of the jokes that even Black Label was like, no.
There's one joke that made me laugh out loud, and I don't mean that as a criticism, because like I watch really funny shows and don't laugh at all. That's just
you're like my wife.
personality.
You just fucking-
I'm like, I'm not about showing emotion. That's not my thing. But
I laughed.
it was
I
like
laughed out loud in my mind.
in the first series, I think the abortion joke was the one that I laughed out
yes.
loud. But in this one, it was later. It's just the he loves me as a bit of an Oedipus complex, and then Harley's like, that's not something you brag about. That made me laugh out loud because that was just a really funny joke.
That's not a good thing. The news reports Lily O'Rourke, a Golden Age film star, was murdered in what appears to be a serial case. Duke brings food to Harley and asks her to consult for the FBI on these Golden Age killings, as they're calling them.
She is Will Graham,
Yes.
and Duke is Jack, whatever.
I was thinking about it extra this time, reading it, and how they created a character that's like bandana goes so far down that they only ever have to draw half of his face. I was like, you geniuses. You'll never have to draw his eyeballs at all.
That's funny. Harley declines, and she says something about her babies, and she's like clarifying, no, the two munchkins sleeping upstairs are my kids. These, motions to the hyenas, are my babies. And that is not only true for the character, but relevant to what happens in the story. This carries into the next scene where she visits Bruce in prison and brings them along. And she says, they're all that I have left from Jack. And he's like, might I remind you of something?
Hey there, bad mom. I noticed, second time flipping back through, that she leaves a little greasy
Heart
on the window.
Yeah.
But then the same heart, and it looks pretty distinct because it's not connected at the bottom, and then it has a little trail off. That Sean uses that same heart design in one of the later covers on the front.
Interesting.
Considering that they're not done by the same person, I thought that was cool.
I want to say I might know the one you're talking about.
It's later. It's like the fourth one or something, and it's like mostly yellow colors because it has kind of
I
pink
see it.
and yellow lemonade.
It's her in the new suit. It's on the upper right corner.
You. This being like the first real scene, other than the go-go dancing one, because they don't do a whole lot of talking. But I think one of my favorite things about this book is their like further exploration of the like levels of their friendship.
They sort of do a This Is Us,
umbrella.
where like, hey, the main character's dead. What do we do? Flashbacks.
I really
Spoilers for This Is Us. Also, what is This Is Us?
What? Oh, it's the fucking Milo Ventimiglia show on NBC with Mandy Moore.
Drama.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah. I'm
Mandy
vaguely familiar
Moore.
with it, but
it's like
now I know that at least one person has died.
Well, no, that's like the
Can you
premise of
not-
the show.
Can you not go an episode without
Oh
spoiling
my god.
something?
The whole they make you wait like a year and a half before you figure out how he dies.
He died.
But you know he dies.
Oh my god!
But you know he
I'm
dies.
not watching this show now.
It's the whole thing. Is these kids lost their dad and how they deal with it. That's the whole premise of the show.
Oh my god!
God damn it.
Yeah, that sounds hella sad.
I don't even know where we were anymore.
How do we write this story now that Batman's gone?
Oh yeah, that was my entire point. Was
Yeah.
just the flashbacks.
I just think it's way cooler because he always acts a certain way towards villain characters. You know, he only ever talks to Joker in like a certain way, even if it is kind of like knock it off, stop, like,
Quit horsing around.
like, you could be better than this, or something.
Put your toys away.
Yeah. Even if he is kind of concerned, or even if he is trying to be some of the characters, like, yeah, you're so far gone. I only punch you in the face and lock you up. And then other characters, he's still kind of trying to pull him back from something. But
Yeah,
in this,
Harley's on a pretty long leash on this.
yeah,
Like, he
but I think that it's like super cool that he.
Well, this Batman has shown a lot of growth from the past 3 stories we had with him, because and they
He's
get
so
into it
nice
more
in
later.
this.
He's nice, but it's the idea that like he needed to merge Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
he needed
yeah.
to like
Yeah.
not have it be a separate thing, and so he's a lot calmer and just. The Batman in this reminds me of Kevin Conroy's Bruce Wayne.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I mean, is that if this universe is rooted in the animated series, and so much inspiration has come from it, that only makes sense because that Batman is the most compassionate one,
Just soft in general.
Yeah. And I think about an episode that I'll mention later, just from listening to their show, I know is one of Sean's particular favorites, or that he has a soft spot for it, where at the
Harvey.
No.
No.
Every time, you fucker. No, but where at the end of the show, when he catches the villain, there's actually like kind of an empathetic hug, and it's a sad conclusion that he has to lock up this person. Like there's a bit more of that in the Kevin Conroy universe.
And the Kevin Conroy Batman just always seemed to me like that's who he really is. He's the guy not in the mask, and Batman is just a character that he's playing, but like he's nicer and goofier and friendlier in general. Whereas in a lot of these stories, it's like Batman is half of who he is truly, and that like quiet, crazy guy who doesn't talk to anyone is as legitimate as the Bruce Wayne guy.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I always felt that in most versions, including the animated series, that the true person was Batman, and he was one of the first people to really actually ham up Bruce Wayne and make him sillier, dumber. But that is an interesting distinction, that he doesn't remove the heart of Bruce from Batman.
Yeah.
He just kind of makes it more like an obvious caricature, sort of.
Yeah, because we're talking about Kevin Conroy now, but like when they're in the way Bruce Wayne talks to Alfred in the Batcave, to me, like defines how a writer is writing that version.
Yeah.
And it's like, is Bruce Wayne just Batman even when he's not wearing the costume?
Yes.
Or like Kevin Conroy's Bruce Wayne is like friendly and funny when he's not dressed like Batman in the cave. He's still making jokes. He's still, I don't know, if we're like that kind of stuff, which some people would not do it that way.
That's interesting. I'm going to fucking just register that thought in my head right now, because I've been, writing my own little Batman stories for fun, and now I want to think, like, I'm going to reread him and think about that. Like, how am I writing him outside of there, just in his private moments?
Yeah, if there was any real Bruce Wayne, that's the real Bruce Wayne. It's when
Yeah.
he's not dressed like Batman, but he's with someone who knows that he's Batman.
Yeah.
That's my like preferred version of this character. I could see if you were like, I bet plenty of billionaires are also dicks. So if that's what you acted like when you were just your billionaire self, and then you acted like a dick when you were a superhero punching people, then okay. But I don't really like that as much as I like the thought of him just having to facade this tough guy in certain scenarios.
Yeah.
But that's not who he... And actually, that to me seems like stronger and more triumphant and less caught in your trauma than like somebody who had some bad stuff happen to them early in their life, but then wanted to enact like positive change.
I think he's got to be torn between both of those things, and like he wants to do good, but is just somewhat stunted by his rage that's the only way he knows how to do good, And I think they talk about that a little bit in Earth 1 that we just read, where it's like, no, we need Bruce too. You know, and that was kind of his motivation for forming the team, is that, yeah, you know what, you're right. I've got to actually commit to this and not just be a front, but use my resources to help people as well as punch mobsters.
Well, and that was fundamental to Sean Murphy's Batman, is that admission he has to Commissioner Gordon at the end of like, maybe I do this because I like it.
Yeah.
Maybe I hurt people because I like hurting people. So
Yeah.
that's part of this character. So seeing this version is like all about helping Harley. That's a
Yeah.
nice growth of that character.
Good tie back, because we are reading the Harley Quinn White Knight story.
I was trying.
Good job. She says, all I have left of Jack is the babies, but he's like, no, you're literal kids. She's pacing back and forth like the Suicide Squad while she's talking to him about whether she should take on this case. And it's a funny bit that's just the art only of the hyenas following her every step back and forth. I really liked. Bruce says not to worry about falling back into her old habits, because now, unlike before when she got mixed up with Jack, like, she does have a support system. Bruce, even though he's in prison, but he's sort of facilitated with Leslie, and there's Duke and Montoya, you know, and like, she's just not so isolated this time. So he's like, I don't think you have to worry about that
Becoming
so
a bad
much.
guy.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you're going to regress that far at this point in your life. I just have to mention, though, Bruce has been in prison for 2 years. Can we acknowledge that? That's pretty crazy.
And he's smiling more than ever. Does it make Harley like more insane or less insane that she could not be doing any of this stuff whenever she wanted to, but she like plays into it because she likes it? Like when you get to the black and white and red thing, and she's just like going on a heist with this crazy guy because she loves him, but clearly she's sane enough to also not do it if she wants to, because she manipulates the scenario.
Yeah, it's like the Batman thing again of like, these are messed up people.
Yeah, it's a little self-destructive for sure.
Yeah, I just like, you are very aware. You are far more aware than any of these other people. And
Yeah, I think there are people who are like expert prodigy psychiatrists who get fulfillment out of that alone and don't have to do
Yeah.
a whole bunch of other crazy
Yeah.
shit on top of it.
Yeah. I do like, though, using her as the Hannibal versus what we've seen with Joker a lot of times, because it's much more logical to use her. He's fucking nuts and super dishonest for as smart as he is. Like, why would you even rely on this person? But to have her in a place like this where she's trying to do better and is a genius psychologist, well, shit. I mean, this is a really cool version of this character that's like, how have we not really seen this yet, you know?
Yeah, maybe they didn't explore the character very much before, at least.
I think it's kind of funny, actually, because if you thinking about this and watching the cartoon and then comparing it to the past stuff, like if she did just get made as like a sidekick character, just like a cool
Yeah,
female
she did.
companion or something, that I like that somebody eventually down the line was like, she's not content anymore to be what we created for her. now she's aware, and now she doesn't want it anymore. Now there's
Skynet is self-aware.
now there's backlash. Like somebody just decided for her that she no longer was content and had to add that into the storyline.
So Harley meets Duke at the crime scene and is introduced to an FBI agent named Quimby, who I can only imagine is after The Simpsons. If we're talking about the animated series in that era, it's got to be.
Who's Quimby?
I did
Mayor?
not do that.
Oh, okay.
Mayor Quimby.
Sorry.
Kennedy
Yeah.
caricature.
Yeah.
He wrote his dissertation about her and the Joker. He's like a super fan of her, it seems. They view the body of an actor known as James Turner, and she flashes back to the Joker and Jason Todd. And she's walking into this crime scene, and they're saying, like, hey, you know, if you don't want to see the body, if, you know, it's going to trigger you, whatever, like, you can sit this one out. And she goes back to, you know, the Joker bloodying up Jason Todd, saying, you can go if you can't handle this, you know.
This one particular panel starts a like series of what are, as much as Sean Murphy kicks butt in these exterior cityscapes, Scalera,
Scalera.
Scanana.
Scalera
Banana.
kicks butt on interior shots, I think.
Depth in general.
Yeah,
From that early like burlesque scene or whatever that place was, just the depth looking through the hall, I was taken by that. Like,
for sure.
That stood out immediately.
In the same way we talked about Dark Prince Charming and like applying this fisheye curvature to scenes and like creating like a strange, not focal point, but like if you were drawing up these grid lines to create perspective or something, like this would have some weird curves in it, but his interiors in this book really rock.
I would add to that the colors by Dave Stewart are very much like what Ben had pointed out in Dark Prince Charming of like this location is like lots of purples and greens and this location is lots of reds and yellows, and we get that a lot in this book, and it really helps everything kind of just jump off the page.
The overall palette of this compared to the original White Knight stuff, I much prefer. And
Really?
it's just a taste thing, not a criticism thing, because
Matt Hollingsworth is awesome.
That's
let's
the
get that out
colorist
of the way.
of the White Knight stuff.
The last two, you
One,
know.
I think it was intentional, but I've talked about it before that it's borderline depressing to me. Like it looks,
For sure, yeah.
It's not enjoyable to look at, and again, it's not because it's done poorly. It's just like it's intentionally like
Yeah.
it looks like a shitty place to be. Where this, like the palette is much brighter. The overall look, even though it's a continuation of that style, of reminds me of like '90s Disney. Which I like a lot.
Yeah, I think that it looks more like Disney and more cartoony. And partially, I think that it like Murphy and Scalera draw figures and faces similarly.
The proportions are very similar.
Yeah, but Mateo applies, I think, a lot more like expression and extra lines, especially in the faces, and a lot of things that help it have a more Disney-esque vibe. And then the colors only serve to like stuff is like a little more, there's more variety to the colors, and they're popping in a different way than Hollingsworth stuff previously.
I just think it's funny that you say that there's fewer lines in Murphy's style, because to me, the most striking thing when I first read this, it was jarring in that everything's on model, and yet Sean's art style is very sketchy, very ink heavy, and this feels like it was penciled and then relies solely on Dave Stewart as the colorist. There's very little black in terms of lines on faces and stuff like that that is kind of the blueprint for this universe. And the first time I read it, like, really threw me off, versus like we're talking about identifiable, traits in the colors. I just read the prelude to Get Joker, which is the new Black Label series.
Are you reading another comic about the Joker?
I picked up the free comic book day title, and one of the things in there was like a little preview of it, and it's just Amanda Waller in a prison cell talking to someone. I won't tell you who it is because you'll fucking get mad.
Is it Milo Ventimiglia?
Yes, and so instantly I was like, holy shit, this looks like White Knight. And then I flipped back and I was like, oh, Matt Hollingsworth. That makes sense. Okay. But he very much has that identifiable style, even removed from Sean. And this being Sean's character designs, but without the sketchy style, is also just another defining characteristic of the penciler on the project.
It serves to cement this universe, because I was impressed like halfway through thinking like that I can keep track of how all these characters are and their connections in this universe while retaining all the other comic book garbage that I've absorbed over the years. Is impressive to not constantly be getting that confused in my head. And I think it is a lot of it just because these are very distinct designs, separate from the other versions.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting to have an artist-writer-driven series and break apart like this, where he's kind of just doing story outlines. Even with those differences, it still feels like that universe the whole time. That's a testament just to the collaboration, I think.
It's morphed beyond fan fiction. When you threw that harsh criticism early on in this episode about that this is just fan fiction. And
no, I didn't say just fan fiction. I mean, that's a thing that I like about it. I actually went back and opened up my notes from when we did the other two ones and just read my pros and cons real fast. And I was like, fan service was like number one when we did the first one. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be pretty high on this one too. They are writing what they want to read themselves. And that is something that connects with me. So this victim, James Turner, they say is famous for starring in The Jester's Court. Harley identifies that he is tied up with something called clown knots.
She was in the Navy before she was.
Because they have like
Let's see if that's actually a thing.
they have like a nose that you can push on to, something. Neo is actually their first suspect since The Matrix is coming back. And as soon as her name comes up, Harley takes off. And the last page of book 1 is her in the jester suit, maskless, which, when you were talking about Bruce talking to Alfred, I always love a Batcave in the bat suit without the cowl look. And that last page of her is so good. And I love that she wears the suit in this book, but is still a version of just herself now. It's just very emblematic of the shift in the balance of her identity.
Yeah, trying to incorporate both identities into one.
Yeah. It's really cool. And honestly, that's a thing that I would love to just have like fucking framed on the wall.
You wanted that suit.
Great shot.
You might be able to pull it off.
Oh, thanks. No, I'd want it for Ange, not for me.
It wasn't very definitive as to whether the clown knot is a real thing or not.
So they're just making up knots now.
I actually, it actually, mini gripes for me. They went like a little hard on the clown stuff early on. I'm like, yes, you're incredible detectives. And these are all like clown-based.
Clownfish all over.
Yeah, like,
Book 2 opens with a fight on site, I put it, at Neo's hideout, which looks sort of like Amusement Mile.
Is that an acceptable shorthand, Neo? Just calling her Neo?
Isn't that what they called her in the first one? They established Neo Joker, and then I thought she was just Neo the whole rest of the time. You don't like it. You're making a grimace. Like you just smelled something bad in your Tupperware. This is expired. Okay, I apologize. We're on the third book.
I would like you to say Neo Joker, the other Harley Quinn.
Colon. What did they call her? The fucking bad cosplayer or something. They had all kinds of digs for her in the first one, and I felt bad. I didn't like it.
Which that's like a Marvel movie. It's like, we spent a lot of time and work creating this new character, but we're still going to go like, maybe this is stupid in case people don't like it.
Still going to rip on it.
Yeah. I was glad to see Neo Joker come back, though. I think that's neat.
Yeah, it establishes the universe again.
And it reminds me that when Evan harshly corrected me for saying, what, Harley Quinn worked at a bank? You fucking, what are you talking about? Yeah, you're right. You got
Did
me.
that haunt you?
You got me. Yeah, I was wrong, and it was on record, and I didn't edit it out.
I did write it on my calendar.
Yes, it will never happen again. So then the teapot is the Martha between these two people.
I love that.
Inexplicably, I didn't understand. They had this sort of like stepbrothers, did we just become best friends moment, and then quickly are like, but I'll still fucking kill you. You like the Batman and nightmare scene. That was a little odd, but they stopped fighting, and Neo's like, yeah, actually, some dude named the producer had tried to enlist me as what he called his starlet, and I was like, no, I don't fucking, I'm doing my own shit. Then Ivy and Hatter show up briefly, and I wasn't quite sure the reason.
They just all hang out now. They're just buds.
Was that just like Mateo wants to draw them, like, yeah, we'll squeeze them back in for a second?
Well, and some of the Ivy Neo stuff.
Look at you.
Yeah, I can
really swallow that bitter pill.
Holy crap.
So adaptable.
Wow.
Because like it's canon, at least in some sense, that they're a couple.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe that's this Neo and Poison Ivy were a couple, but not original, or they both were or something or whatever. I don't know why Hatter's there also.
Well, I'll tell you this. I know that Katana's background is in romance novels, and Ange was just telling me yesterday about romance novel tropes and some of the basic setups that they do, and she's like, one of them is enemies that become lovers, they fucking hate each other, and I was like, so maybe
they're fucking fuck each
maybe
other.
they're planting some seeds here, because Neo is adamant that they are roommates in the beginning.
But they say it's like emboldened and italicized.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because she's like, no, we're roommates, So she's trying to downplay that. But then later we do see that Ivy does care for Harley, and so even though they're not on good terms, it still allows that maybe that is in the future for her, which I would love, because that's my favorite version of the characters, not tied to Joker, but I like them together much more.
Yeah, they're a fun crew.
Yeah.
A lot of White Knight, and then even more this has like romance feel.
Yeah.
I like the dialogue in this, actually.
Me too.
Sometimes more. It feels a little more emotional, a little more human, or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't
think
know.
it feels more like a heartfelt story, kind of between, and it just kind of shows like the different forms that friendship can take or something.
That should be the subtitle of this whole arc.
I'm done with this podcast.
Mic drop. The different forms friendship can take.
Wow.
Can I actually just mention, I hadn't really thought of this yet, but maybe that's just the significance of, okay, we're going to do a Harley spinoff. Should probably be a female writer, if it's from her point of view.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're talking about, of the like special sauce that's like, oh, something's a little different here. It feels right.
Yeah, and maybe additionally just somebody who doesn't normally write in this format.
For sure.
You know, and same thing, maybe if you took a comic book writer and had them write a novel, what would that look like? And so here's a person. Yeah. there's many blank places where pictures
Artist
should be.
fills in.
Yeah.
Harley exits and reminisces on spending a lot of time there in the past. She has a flashback with Jack at this amusement park setting. It actually gives the origin of the Puddin' nickname.
I like that.
And
please tell me that's not my new nickname.
they also see what I believe are Bud and Lou as pups, because they're having the pudding, the little joke comes up, and please don't call me that or whatever, and then they see the hyenas, and he's like, you can't fucking adopt them, and she's like, they're babies, come on, it's okay, That's likely how she obtained two definitely illegal animals as pets, But I like all these little vignettes that kind of deepen the context of these characters' lives, and not just like, here's their new adventure.
Yeah.
It seemed like we got a lot of Neo and Joker backstory in the other stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
But not so much of their backstory.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like
all that Edmund Wayne shit got in the way.
Well, I
we get it. You don't like pirate stuff.
Yeah, in one hand, it's kind of cool, though, where they're like,
Arr.
This is the Harley that you know. Just kidding. This is the Harley that you thought you knew. Here's another character that you didn't know about. Here's some swashbuckling shit. and then here's the Harley that you thought you knew, but turns out, it's just so cool because they're like simultaneously adding to this universe, but also kind of like changing my perception of this character in general and her in any other universe. Like, this is Jack Napier, this is that Joker. Like, okay, so this is like 89 Joker, and also you've been a part of his life for so long that you were there when he fell in a vat of acid.
Yeah.
Like, and so you're randomly interjecting this character who I thought was like, no,
a way later edition.
Yeah, the Batman cartoon would have me think that Joker's been the Joker for a long time, and she came up at some point. Now they're weaving her, like, no, they've had this strange relationship for a very long time, and she really volunteered for this stuff, and it's pretty interesting.
Some of this, I feel like, can only exist in this universe and is unique to this. But that element of like her being involved and what they bring to her character, I completely agree, and I like it because you could take what you get in this and you could apply it to basically any version of her elsewhere, because it still fits in there with like the existing Harley. That's really cool.
I was thinking about, just as you're talking, I was thinking about like...
You weren't listening to me? You were thinking...
No, I was listening.
What am I going to say next?
I was
What
thinking
am I going to
about
say?
like movie tricks and like visual things, and I was trying to think of an example also, but I can recall part of like one of the Harry Potters where they're like...
You're a wizard.
Where like the scene.
Don't say his name.
The scene plays out and the movie
Don't
moves
spoil
on.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll come.
But then you get to the end and they like revisit the same scene, but turns out it was like.
You're doing the time travel stuff? Or?
Yeah, it was just, it's like you only see what the camera shows you, So like what we thought about Harley was like just the camera pointed this direction.
It's Joker's perspective of the story, not hers.
But if you had a wide angle on it, you would have seen that this person was also in the same. It was just, but it gave you this perception because they presented it a certain way. Turns out this other stuff was happening simultaneously. Well, that's really cool.
And I feel like that shit was just like, oh, wow, what if... But there's a part of me that wonders, like, oh, man, how cool would that have been if, like, in the beginning? But every one of these, he's been like, I don't know if I'll ever get to drop Batman again. Like, I'm just going to throw everything I got into this one, And so I know it wasn't that way, but there's still a part of me that's like, oh, man, how cool it would be if, like, he was writing that one and then thought, like, but later I'll show you, all this other perspective on the scene. And I don't know. I think that's really neat. What you were just saying about the whole flow of this story in this universe and how they compare. What I think about this one is that it brings it back down to earth. You know, it's like this is a more grounded human psychology, Batman style detective story. It's not some crazy ancient history or some
Car
Justice League team up or some
chases
whatever.
and-
It's,
Yeah, if you peeled
mental.
the stylistic elements away, and specifically, I mean, like the storytelling, writing stylistic elements, this is a very traditional story. It's like the whole thing serves to introduce two new villains who are like old school, silly villains. They have silly names that are both movie themed, and they have silly outfits.
Yeah.
But that it's because of those stylistic elements, it doesn't feel like that, but it is a very, like, as you say, grounded, straightforward story.
I mean, this feels more like a sequel to White Knight in some ways than Curse did to me. You know, it's more on that, like, what if this was real? Because we got a little fantastical in the second one, but I mean, the whole idea of the first one is like, well, what if Batman was real? What would that cost? What would the politics be around this? You know, and this is very much like, okay, well, what if Harley Quinn was real? How would a person with that intellect deal, especially removing Joker from the equation? What happens there?
Or what does she have to offer?
Exactly. So next in the story, Montoya tries to get Neo's location from Harley, but she protects Neo as if, like, hey, consider this my CI. I'm not giving her up. I made a deal. Hey, I know where you're at, but I won't tell anybody for a week or something like that. You know, you can get out of here.
Definitely not this obvious place that everybody already knows about.
Yeah.
Don't check there.
That was every
Stay away from the
episode
haunted
of
carnival. Nothing going on there.
the animated series, though. Every single one, it was like, okay, where's this scarecrow hiding? It's like the haunted house, you know, like it's like it's always something so obvious, you know.
I want Croc to be in the iceberg lounge.
Yeah, mix it up a bit, guys. Come on.
Montoya warns her to keep an eye on Quimby, who has all kinds of questions about her past. He's trying to take care of her kids who crying and all this stuff, and he's just like very all up in her shit. And we already know, okay, he's written about her, he studied her. Like, this dude is, I don't know, something's a little off about this guy. He quickly asks when he hears their names, Jackie
Sam's like,
and Bryce.
this guy cares for children. Something is wrong with
Yeah,
him.
not a fan already.
This character.
I do not
keep my
relate.
eyes on this guy.
He quickly asked, though, like, so are they Jack's kids? You know, he has no subtlety. He's seeing his opportunity and he's taking it.
He's a super fan meeting his idol.
Yeah, he's me. So here we get a flashback that's almost like, I mean, not the tone of it, but sort of like Joaquin's Joker, in that Jack is having these involuntary laughing fits and she's kind of helping him get that under control, and she's documenting the process along the way. And this becomes the article that she publishes upon graduation and kind of gets her foot in the door, and he freaks out. And I guess, I don't know how that would not come up, like, hey, guess what? So-and-so's going to publish my shit. That's a pretty big deal, you know? But yeah, he got very upset when he found out that it was about him, and he bails. And Batman again pops
Was waiting
in
outside.
and was like, hey, so I'm just checking up on my favorite civilian.
Told you so.
Yeah.
Just treat him more like a patient. If you've been studying him, you gotta maybe distance yourself emotionally a little bit and forget that he's your boyfriend if you want to actually help him get better.
Take it from me, psychologically balanced human.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I mean, I can see what other people are doing wrong. I just have a pretty big blind spot, you know.
Joker hates journaling. I told you in the beginning.
And he's the one who recommends that she applies for Arkham. And typically, that is where they would have met. I actually regret a little bit because our next book that we're going to read is Harleen, which is a bit of a reimagining, but it's very true to the original origin story. You know, the Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, New Batman Adventures origin story, Mad Love. And it just kind of deepens that. So I feel a little bit weird about coming to that second.
Yeah, you made a bad choice. That's
But
right.
this just came out very recently and I wanted to read it. So
We have to do that all the time anyways, where we're Like, forget about that universe. Read this universe.
Yeah.
Forget about that one now.
Keeping
That's what
track
we're
of
doing
all
all the
this
time
is-
anyways.
Well, I think that
Exhausting.
I have to hold the entire Bible in my head at all times. So to have all this junk on top of that, it's a lot of work.
yeah, this is just your extra reading on top of your daily Bible verses.
Yeah, and it's confusing. I'm like, Moses, Batman, which one?
Yeah, which one wore a cowl and fought crime?
there. Now
Which
we
one
offended
of the
somebody
apostles?
else.
One
was
star.
a vigilante?
No stars.
Yeah.
I don't tune into this for religious criticism. I tune into this. I wanted to
Nope.
acknowledge this. I wanted to.
We're still on book 2, man. Come on.
Well, just
There's 6.
Batman crawling in the window.
It's creepy.
Makes me like it is creepy, but
I
it
love
makes
that
me
picture.
like this design of Batman more than anything in the other stuff.
Dude, the fucking collar.
Well, it's so brightly
Told you
lit and
guys.
so again the design there's less lines overall and it's brightly lit and you can just see it very plainly. It's really really cool looking. Where when in the Sean Murphy art it's so stylized that it's a little easy to get lost in it. And this is just like a very flat shot of like look, it's got cool like black accents down the legs and then the gray up here and
Yeah, like here's a random chance to just see him standing in a brightly lit room.
yeah, profile.
That's an attractive
shadows.
man.
Yeah.
You're like, look, check out the legs on that guy.
He must work out.
Yeah, damn.
Two-tone shoes, it's very cool.
Book 2 ends with Simon Trent, who's a new character to this universe, one you may recognize. He walks into his apartment. We see the Grey Ghost memorabilia and is ambushed by Starlet, murdered, we assume, who is shown on screen for the first time. These killings before have been...
Post-mortem, as we say.
Yeah, okay. And then book 3 opens with Simon tied up. Starlet is asking about the rumored affair between him and his co-star, Sophia Valentine.
I had a happy little like fanboy heart moment when like, oh, the Grey Ghost, and just because I haven't kept up with everything, but I do vaguely remember that. Like, man, that's so cool. And then also I like the little meta nature of like drawing somebody else's drawing, how the poster on the wall is like the animated
Isn't it the
series.
splash title for that episode or something? Or
yeah.
Beware the Grey Ghost is
Right.
the episode.
That's so cool. It's different if you're drawing a version of a real thing, but then drawing your version of somebody else's drawing is like kind of
a
layers to me.
drawing of a drawn poster.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have to ask this
I like that.
because this was going to be one of my cons. Using this character, and we've seen Joker had all the like Batman toys in his room and stuff. And this one confused me though. Like the Grey Ghost is existing IP that Bruce Wayne grew up watching. That's the whole point.
That's the same way it is in this universe too, though.
So having a poster of Beware the Grey Ghost implies that he starred in that cartoon as well as the movie it was the basis for.
Yes.
And they knew that Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne was the person who watched it in the episode, so it just like isn't
Yeah.
too much.
I just thought in this universe it existed that like that character existed for a long time, and later, once Batman was also already a thing, somebody
It's like a crossover.
somebody made a story about Batman being
Yeah.
teaming up with him.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
maybe just using the episode name and the exact art, I was like, how?
Yeah.
And then my fucking 7-year-old brain exploded.
It would be different if you only presented him as the Grey Ghost or the guy who played the Grey Ghost, and then it only had memorabilia of his character, but nothing that also included Batman in it.
Yeah.
And it's not just Batman, it's like...
Commissioner Gordon's up
Yeah,
there.
yeah. It's like he's an actor that knows that he was in a cartoon, and that cartoon is also a viewable thing in this world that we're reading. And yeah,
Yeah,
just
it was
doesn't
just
make
like one step too meta for me, and it fucking blew
fuck is
my
wrong with
mind.
you?
Yeah.
I saw it and I was like, that's neat. And then I kept reading.
And both times that I read this, I was just like, but how does... Okay.
Oh my god.
I just can't get into it. I don't believe it. It's not.
Yeah, despite what you may think, Sam does not get high. These things just naturally occur to him.
It's true.
This story had some strong points, but you know,
That poster threw me off.
I got so caught up in that, I couldn't figure it out. I was doing some Charlie Day mental gymnastics there, you know. Simon escapes and successfully fights off Starlet, who just bails. She leaves all of her shit behind. Harley meets Quimby, who theorizes that these victims may know each other, that they were part of the Dashing Dames and that perhaps the killer is one of them. At Simon's apartment, where they get called over, Duke questions, how did Quimby get a call to beat them there on the scene?
There was a woman at dispatch.
Yeah, what's going on here? And Simon is recognizing Quimby as Sophia's son because he's, from that era. And then everyone's kind of like, why is this guy here? This is super weird. This is like mad conflict of interest. And Harley is kind of the one, and I like this, just the characters mirroring each other in a way that she can empathize and go, well, look, we've all withheld a little bit of our history to get jobs here and there, and talking about how she couldn't have got the interview at Arkham if they knew that the patient she wrote about was someone she was involved with, and kind of puts a different spin on it. It's like,
that probably
okay.
would have been better, though, if she didn't get the job. That's a bad example.
And that's just a complication of this version, this universe. But that's one of the cool things about her, of like, I've done fucked up shit, and I'm still trying to do better, so I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt.
It adds more tension to the Quimby story, too, because it would be really easy to just have him...
If it was just over right there.
Yeah, or like he's... I almost thought, I was like, is he going to be Ethel? Is he the Starlet?
He's in drag?
Yeah, the advantage of a comic book is you could draw, like with Phantasm, you can draw a character one way and then reveal later that they were somebody else, because it doesn't have to be an actual person. So to not have it just be like, oh yeah, he's a creepy weirdo, and he's the bad guy, or he's with the bad guys, was nice.
Yeah.
Because that would have been really easy to do.
True. He's like a...
He's got posters of
double
you on his
agent.
wall. Oh my God, what the sick fuck is like that?
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Kind of cool, actually, too, because when they go to his mom's place later on, and then you get this version of him that it kind of like brings more stuff into question, sort of like, oh no, he's like kind of a creepy fanboy, you know, and maybe he could be a bad guy. But then it just turns out that like, yeah, okay, well, maybe this is like a blurry line with...
He's complicated.
Fascination.
Like the main character who used to hang out with a murderer.
but he actually does, he's genuinely interested in you, and he cares about you, and he's a younger person and stuff. And yeah, I think it's kind of nice, and I'm glad that he didn't end up like also being the creepy bad guy. Like, no, he's just kind of a nice guy that actually was genuinely interested in you.
Yeah, had something to offer.
Until the end.
Yeah.
I think they do a good job, this series in general, of giving you enough of a character to want a little bit more and be curious about them, and just kind of gradually peel back the layers as you go. But that works very well in a Harley story that's very psychology driven and internal moral crossroads sort of situations,
It's kind of a lot to do also in pretty short time. It's not all
Yeah.
that many issues, and to conjure a character that hasn't previously existed,
a few of them.
give you material, give you a backstory, try to reel you in, make you like them. That's kind of a lot in just a couple issues.
When I was rereading this, I was like, damn, these are more dense than I thought. This is like Scott Snyder amount of dialogue at times. It's a lot. So they visit an antique camera shop after finding a very specific vintage camera in Simon's apartment, because they're like making films of these victims, that they're taking and killing. An anonymous package was left at the camera shop addressed to Quimby. And when they fired it up on this rare camera that they had that matches that film stock, it's of him interrupting his mom's interview. So Sophia is the interview subject, and he's a crying kid in the background, like I think we saw at one point of Tony Stark doing Howard Stark in one of the Iron Man films.
That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Somebody get that kid out of here.
Then the interviewer, who is soon revealed to be his nanny, actually, she was like a film student or something, consoles him and kind of pulls him out of the frame. And at the same time, it's explicitly said that the camera shop is one of 3 places that owns that specific model of camera that could play that film. And Sophia, his mom, is one of the others. And I believe the third one is the broken one that was there, right? Or is there 3 more after the broken one?
The broken one that was at Trent's place, the Gotham Film Institute, and then his mom has it.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
yeah.
that shop person wouldn't know anything about the broken one probably when she threw her number out. Otherwise, she would say 4.
Gotcha. Quimby offers
Numbers.
to take them to Sophia so they don't have to wait for a warrant. Like, hey, I can fucking take you over to my mom's house. Like, no big deal. And it's kind of the only reason that they allow him to stay around, because like you are really way too much of a conflict of interest here. And he's like, I can get your foot in the door, and like, fine, we'll use you.
Whatever, Quimby.
When they get there, she's very cold. We find out that she only had a kid for her career to help
his
appearances.
mom was a huge bitch.
She won her first Oscar while pregnant, saying, well, it worked, didn't it? His middle name is Oscar, which is just a little bit
Maybe
morbid in a way.
maybe she
kind of-
waited until she got the Oscar to give him a middle name.
She was manifesting her
Yeah,
destiny.
and that may be so, but just the whole
In
thing of
utero.
like, I mean, he's being used right now voluntarily,
Yeah.
and was being used even just to exist in the world. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's a lot.
That's another one of my standout interior shots where they come into the mansion and you've got your like walkway up top and the stairs and oh yeah, that bad boy right there, boom.
Yeah, that's great.
And this has one of my favorite lines in the whole thing. You can be honest and still have tact.
Yeah.
I held that in my heart.
Yeah, that's what assholes say. I'm just honest.
Just being honest, man. Yeah. I never liked that.
Tact?
Yeah. You're like, hey, I know you pretty well. Shut up. Duke finds custom shoes matching the heel cap that Harley
You
found
could totally tell a woman wrote this.
at one of... I like that the evidence at the first crime scene was like the cap from the inside of the heel
And only
of
one
a shoe.
cobbler in town makes this.
That like no dude
The
was
cobbler.
yeah, it's the Adam Sandler movie. But no, it really is, to me, like, okay, yeah, if you have this specific era of actors, you know, back then, there's not like a million movie studios and all this other shit going on. There's like a go-to guy for that level of celebrity that gets all this shit custom made and that it was recognizable. And then, oh, well, shit, we already knew you were part of that camp. Seems like you've got something in common. Oh, yeah, that's Ben Polanski. He makes all the shoes for everybody, you know?
He's
Like,
the best shoemaker in town. Well, then the knives.
they
are right
also
in that
find the
section.
knives right there, and she demonstrates that she still has all of her throwing abilities in a very dangerous and showboat way, and acknowledges that some of them are missing because they're supposed to be on display at the awards event that's coming up. So just a lot of red flags going on here. After we already questioned Quimby's involvement, and then why he's so eager to take him there after he was withholding that to begin with. She shows Harley to Quimby's childhood bedroom. This is just the two of them, Sophia and Harley. And this is where we see the floor to ceiling, just like Jack Napier's room with all the Batman shit, or like Sammy Warm Hands' room with all the Batman shit. Floor to ceiling, it's Harley Quinn stuff. Shout out to Angel Young. It looked like her room.
How often do parents do this in real life?
Leave their kids' room
when they're
intact?
because you see it in movies all the time. Like
It's usually when somebody goes like missing or something.
yeah, they're
or
dead.
like the child passes or something, and they just like leave it in.
Sorry, speaking of tech, if they're dead. If the child passes. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
But I just think that's an odd thing to do.
Well, I think sometimes you
reclaim
see
your
her, like,
house.
they go to college
Decorate how you want.
or something like that, and they're like,
Yeah.
when they're
Come
still
back.
in their 20s, you leave it. And this guy's, I think he's still in his 20s. He's just a prodigy.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he's a
I-
young person.
But usually you don't see it in a room like your garage here that's covered in
It's a studio, Ben. It's a studio.
your man cave.
It was a
covered in-
garage 16 years ago, okay?
It's normally like a simple room with a desk or something. Like, oh, I left it. You can go up and
here's
stay
my,
there. When you
here's my
Yeah,
poster
yeah.
of Nirvana on the wall.
Yeah, sure. You still have a place here. There is still a bed, but I've also redecorated it to match the house and suit my taste.
I think it serves the story, but, I mean, if we're asking questions about it, this lady clearly doesn't give a fuck about her kid.
Yeah.
And has more than enough space to spare in her house. She probably just didn't want to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, that's his shit. Who cares?
Or
Fuck him.
again, yeah, seeing him only superficially.
Yeah.
Like, so she could, oh, this is where my son grew up. My son that I love. Here's his room with all his stuff in it.
oh, yeah, I left it just the way that he had it.
We're so close.
Yeah, or I thought in the opposite, like, I'm going to make him look like a dumbass in front of his adult friends later on.
Creepy weirdo.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, while they're in the other room, do you want to see the shrine he has in your name?
Well, this is the moment where I was like, oh, is he Starlet?
Yeah.
Seeing Starlet in the closet. I was like, did he go up here and change?
Did he change real fast?
And hide in the closet.
Creepy little boy.
On top of that, though, they contextualize it by saying he was obsessed to the point that he became a psychiatrist after her and even celebrated when Jason Todd disappeared at the time. So he was very invested in the Joker Harley shit in a pretty unhealthy way.
I was thinking, what if they like wove it in where he was like, yeah, he was even one of those guys who voted to have that kid killed. And,
Yeah, that's meta.
Get some weird comic later, like, yeah, man, he really hated him.
That would have stopped me for about a half an hour. I was like,
Wait,
but
a
how
minute.
he even wrote
Does DC
in
Comics exist in this
yeah.
universe?
Oh my god,
it does though, clearly. Yeah, I love that though. That would have been fucking awesome.
he hated him so much he even wrote in the company, had him murdered.
That's great. So Bruce in the prison hall, getting his lunch or his breakfast or whatever. This is great.
So badass.
It opens with what looks like basically a prison riot. It's just a giant brawl everywhere you can see. And then Bruce enters with his lunch tray, and everyone just like stands at attention like they're in the fucking boot camp or something like that. And he passes through, sits down, begins to eat, and then they all go back to fighting and go crazy.
I like two things: that they all pause like, and then also that the dude after that like addresses him to tell him news like he's his messenger or something
in the middle of a fight.
Hey, yeah. Hey, Bruce. Yeah. They go back to punching. Hey, Bruce.
You got a visitor.
Somebody stop by for you. They're not fighting. That's a musical. We just don't hear the stuff. It's actually a dance. It's a dance.
So you
routine.
want to be a man? Yeah, I want to be a man.
Good one. Evan's got gems today.
Booyah.
So Harley is the visitor, and she expresses concern about Quimby's obsession. She says that Joker might not exist if it hadn't been for her obsession with Jack and tracking him after he left. And then we get a stunning homage to the Axis Chemical scene in '89. This is what Evan was talking about earlier, where she is trying to reason with Jack. She hears this call on the police scanner of like, oh, there's screaming and then laughter, and she's like, oh shit, like maybe this is what I've been waiting for, and finds him, and I think he turns around and takes a swing at her, if I remember right, before he realizes who it is, and immediately comes back down to his old self, looking her right in the eyes, and it's very heartfelt. And fucking Batman shows up, and we get everything that we've seen before. But again, the interior work, the bullet refraction, and the
Him getting shot is pretty brutal. It
Yeah.
looks more like it sliced off like a meat layer of his face.
Filet
Yeah, like at the deli.
way that is redone is just remarkable, and the colors and the interior work, the detail is just fantastic. I mean, this was maybe my favorite part of this book, and just I remember getting to there and going, it really took me back.
He starts sliding the Joker colors on him too. He's got like purple and green socks or something.
His skin looks
and-
particularly white.
Yeah. He's like starting the transition of this character. Like how he's beating that dude up, and the other guy's like, the boss is gonna be mad if you hurt this guy anymore. I'm gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
You're a butthole. I don't want to hang out for this.
Duke tracks Harley, who's tracking Quimby, who's tracking the producer to his lair, which was bait from Starlet. That's a lot of layers. Starlet plays old footage of Sophia attacking her with a liquor bottle, right? So remember, she was the nanny, and they were having a fight, and she's like, you know what, I'm about to get my lucky break. Like, you're a fucking has-been. You're old news, right? She throws a bottle of Jack at the nanny's face and disfiguring her. And they had addressed before that Starlet wears like a shitload of makeup, and they thought, well, maybe she is one of these old ass actresses.
These
you know?
old ass.
Yeah. I mean, they were talking about that. Well, some old lady's not gonna be able to fucking throw a dude around like we've seen at these crime scenes. So yeah, these old ass ladies. That's what we're looking at for suspects, right? So maybe it is one of those if she's like really covered up. We've seen how Sophia can throw a knife. Who knows? But then realizing, okay, this is like a Clayface origin where he is an actor who is disfigured, and then he has to kind of reckon with someone whose image is their identity,
It didn't take me long to come to terms with it, but at first, in this scene where they're showing this footage, the nanny is already in it, and then so it's more like filming the attack. Kind of, you're seeing this like scene play out, and at first I was like,
You're like, who's filming this?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, but who's filming this? And then if you go back to the other one, the first time you see some footage like that, it doesn't it ends up kind of including her, but it starts, where she's the one filming and
She's a little bit off screen.
yeah, she's off screen and
asking
they're
questions.
talking like you would have heard her voice or something, and then she ends up like, oh, let me scoop up this kid and dip out.
Yeah.
So then I brought that with me to like, okay, that must be the case. Also in this one, they were doing something else, but then the mom was being a boozer and chucked the bottle, and it ended up being more like started as something else.
That makes sense.
Turned out to be documenting this, and if you were only presented with a certain like snip of it, then
Yeah.
you wouldn't have seen where she was off screen or something. It starts with the action is going down already, but at first I was kind of thrown off like, who the hell is filming this stuff? Like, this isn't they don't all have cell phones. Like, who the hell is
If you just give me 20 minutes, I'm going to set up this camera and film our argument.
yeah, something
in case
bad's
something
gonna go
happens.
down. It's gonna change my life.
Film the police.
I'm gonna turn this on.
But yeah, that's kind of like what you mentioned about the expansive perspective in some of these flashbacks of like, okay, we've seen this much, now we're seeing from a different angle and somebody else was there. It's not unlike that, what you're talking about of like where the tape is cut, We're only getting part of the story here.
This was a moment where I was a little unsure of how I felt about new characters.
Yeah.
I feel that anytime like a long-standing thing brings in new characters, because
Fucking Bluebird, who is this?
who is Bluebird again? Was that like another sidekick or something? Or
Yeah, that was one of Scott's inventions.
it's because, and I've said this before, a lot of the old ones are dumb too, but they've been around so long and they've been so woven in that I accept them.
Yeah. I've known these dumb characters since childhood.
Yeah, so when it's now here's a new
Mr. Freeze
character.
is awesome, right?
Yeah,
Right?
Cold Man.
He's so
Snow
cool.
Guy. Oh yes, ventriloquist. Oh, what a cool, not stupid thing.
Deep character.
Man, that dude who laughs is the funniest, though, man. He's the greatest one.
Dumb idea for a character. What if we made a clown, but he's bad? No. Bad clown. That's not it. We got to call him something else.
Keep going.
Laffy.
Yeah.
There we go. That's it, I think.
Gaggy.
Just that, like, okay, so that's the villain of the story, is just this FBI agent's ex-nanny who was hit in the face with a bottle. It paid off in the end, and I was on board by the end. But at this moment, I was a little like, this is...
I'm with you because think about it. This is 6 books. This is the end of book 4. And we're already getting the big reveal. And it's not anything that we're like super invested in. And so it's like,
it was the nanny that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
yeah.
Even. Sorry.
Do you remember the movie Role Models with Sean William Scott and Paul Rudd?
Yeah, loosely.
It's like a Big Brother sort of program that they have to
They're
be
mentors, yeah.
And so they're telling ghost stories around the campfire to all these little kids, right? And the nerdy camp counselor guy, he's well into the story. He's like, and then the killer shows up and it's Evan. And everyone is just like blank face, like what? And he's like, the pizza delivery guy from the first scene, and they're like, I don't remember that. It was sort of like but we're not following that story. Like that didn't have the same impact.
I can only hear Paul Rudd and think of Kunu. And
You must be from London.
There's some sadness behind those eyes.
I think what weakens it is that...
Katana, turn this off.
No, and it's just that it's not their fault, but you're writing what is still essentially a Batman story. Mm-hmm. They did a lot of work to get him out of this. Like, we'll put him in prison, and he's given up being Batman, and now he's like a dad behind bars figure, and like.
But they have her doing the Batman thing.
Yeah, and you still have Harley Quinn, and you still
That's
have these
great.
other characters that exist in that world. So when you're trying to weave this other well-told story in there with these new characters, it just feels like a little weird. Like, isn't this a story about that Paul Dini character? Isn't this a story about Joker? Like,
And I think that's it. It loses its focus a little bit or something. Almost we needed a more familiar or more simple villain. Because the villain is not the point of this story. The point of the story is her redemption,
yeah, coming to grips with herself and trying to make that work.
Yeah.
Quimby maybe should have been involved.
That was the Paul Rudd accent right there. Yeah.
Ben is having a stroke. We are not equipped to deal with it.
Please help.
Send the EMTs.
Quimby maybe should have been involved
If you're hearing this episode, call
even
911.
earlier. 4 weeks later, I'm gone. I'm already dead.
Yeah, send one to the past.
But even as I say that, I mean, he was worked in well because she did such a good job of slowly introducing this character, slowly getting you, and as you said, over only 6 issues, slowly getting you to like them and trust them, and then slowly getting you to suspect them.
Yeah.
The work was done. It's just an unavoidable challenge of writing a story about characters that have been around for 400 years. It's rough.
Do you guys think that these creators know when a character is going to like hit? Or
No.
Harley
was an accident.
Do you
herself.
think that they are like, this character will have no longevity, and so I will not make them awesome on purpose?
I think maybe there's a little bit of that now that everything is very self-aware and we have so much to draw on. But I mean, that's what we were talking about with like, most of these characters are fucking dumb. But they've worked.
They're not going to pop up a lot because they worked well for that thing. Even a great character, that's why we haven't seen Phantasm until now,
Recently,
when Tom King brought him back, or brought her back.
Spoilers.
Yeah, debatably, like
Fuck
that.
you.
That to me, like maybe they didn't know what they were doing in the past. Maybe it's just me because that's my aesthetic or something. But Phantasm is like destined to be a character to me. Like just by design, I'm like, you are too dope not to be more than just this right here.
Well, these are skilled creatives we're talking about. So I do think like once somebody throws up a design, maybe it's gone through like 3 or 4 iterations, they probably have a moment of like,
That's dope. Yeah.
that's it. That's good.
You know, another thing that just kind of aids to this, like, I don't care about this character feeling is that you're introduced to this character, this bad guy. You're even given less info really than like Quimby, who you kind of get early on. Plus they like regale you with all this personal information. And so you're like, yeah, cool. I know this guy. He's my friend.
And
No, the villain's
Quimby is interesting because he's not who he appears to be. He's specifically fixated on our main character, and yet he parallels our main character. So he's well used.
Yeah. And part of the thing about the villain is like, one, I don't like their like over the top movie gags. I don't like their lines. I don't like their swimming in a world of cinema all the time. I don't care about that.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Harley Quinn, the true power of friendship, swimming in a world of cinema. Headline: Local man saves.
If I was just reading this issue by issue and I didn't know how long it was going to go, maybe I would feel differently. But that I know that, like, we're this far in, you're telling me this stuff. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm wrong, that you're going to be disappeared in the course of the next 2 books. Like, how can I care about you a whole lot?
That's exactly what I was just talking with Ange about last night. Again, she was telling me about these romance books, and she's like, if they kiss in the first 50 pages, I'm like, fuck this. You just gave away all the tension, all the build-up, and I was like, that is the critique that I gave my friend Danny about his song the other day.
You guys kiss.
I was like, you have this...
Yeah, if we kiss
No, it's like
within you playing the song.
You have the, like, starts with a nice soft verse and a little bit of build-up, and then the band kicks in. There's this cool little guitar lick, and then the second verse doesn't come in. It just goes into this crazy guitar solo. I was like, that's awesome. Save it. Build up to it, you know, let there be some release when it happens, you know, not just like, here's the coolest part of the song. Now that that's out of the way, here's another verse. You know,
Please
like,
listen to the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like just creating some sort of dynamic up and down as you climb that roller coaster, you know, and that's kind of how I felt about this. It was just like, oh, already? Is that real? Is that, you know, maybe it's a misdirect? No, this is the one.
Yeah,
you know?
there's nothing left at that point, other than just having them meet up and whatever the conflict will be.
Kind of showed your hand, I guess. Yeah.
Have we never made the Amber Ange romance novel connection prior to this? Because Amber is steeped in...
Are they like, is there one about them?
No,
Like, going
not
at
that
it?
I know of. No, but I would read it.
I'm making,
Unless they kiss in the first 50 pages.
'Cause it
and
gives
I'll be
it
like,
away,
fuck that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But unless,
attention.
like with all mediums and tropes, if you could figure out a way to subvert that.
Yes.
Like they kiss, and then 10 pages later, one of them dies.
Yeah, totally. Like if you're aware of the tropes, and so you.
Yeah.
It's like when
it's a
Steve
misdirect.
Rogers and Bucky kissed, and then Bucky fell off, and he came back as a villain.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Spoilers. God. Now I don't want to watch all 18 of those movies.
All right, so the climax leads into book 5 as Harley is captured. Duke is knocked out, and Quimby is made to choose whether to save Harley or to kill her for the nanny he once loved. And to me, he is so far removed from that person, from that life, and has spent all these years fixated on Harley and is now finally getting to know her. To me, this is a no-brainer. There's not any conflict in his mind. I don't get the suspense here.
Despite the fact that he visually turns the gun in her direction and stuff, it just doesn't seem like it.
I think he does it because
Why
he's
would-
sort of like
Well, he shoots the camera.
probably under some sort of violent threat there. So he's like, okay, I'm going to play along. How the fuck am I going to get out of
Yeah.
this? But
There needed to be, and I know there's examples, but I can't think of anything specific. But it's when a story does this, where we meet a character, and then they directly fall under suspicion later. And usually it's a scene that only the audience is shown, where like they do something creepy or weird.
yeah.
But then it turns out to just be like some weird, creepy or weird thing they have, but they're still a good guy or a good character.
Yeah.
There's not enough of that with him. We get like The Room, but even that's not enough. There needed to be more like some kind of argument with his mother, and then he loses it and does
Yeah.
something really like, oh, that's
Paint
maybe a
paint
bit
more of a
too
picture
much.
for me.
Yeah, to show that there's something more going on inside, that he is capable of flipping on her because the nanny came back.
Yeah,
There's
that would be
none of that.
good because right now I think of that meme. There's the red button on the left and the red button on the right, and then there's the picture of the guy sweating and scratching his head like, "Oh no, how can I decide?" And a lot of storytelling is putting your characters through really hard choices, and what does that do to them? How does that change them, right? And I just felt like, well, I know what he's going to do as soon as I read it.
And you could use your imagination to envision like, oh, that sounds like a rough childhood experience and experiences, and I could imagine
She was the one silver lining of it,
Yeah.
but it's like, bitch, you gone crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't...
Yeah, it's not the way it's presented is not challenging.
yeah.
You a bad guy.
Like, it's
now.
very clearly painted this lady is off her rocker and
Yeah.
is not the person you once knew. He's already trying to talk her down,
Nothing about him seems bent enough to accept her the way we've seen her.
or at least if issue 4 had ended with him going, Ethel? Really? And she's like, yeah, now I'm fucking Starlet. And he's like, that's kind of hot.
I like the look, the name. Can we change
if
the
he
name?
was bought in when the reveal was made and he wasn't instantly like, what? Why? Jesus Christ, you
Yeah.
know? But that was kind of he had a natural human response to like, oh, this is nuts.
wrong.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
We have reason to question the like mental stability of some of these characters already, but the fact that they would show up and be like, I know we haven't seen each other for a long time. I'm bad and I've been doing bad stuff, and you need to come with me right now.
And I'm going to kill your girlfriend.
change
No,
your life.
wait.
Come hang with me. And,
You kill your girlfriend.
and then expect that the person would be like, excellent argument.
Yeah.
I am coming with
This
you.
is like the person you haven't seen from high school trying to give you the multi-level marketing pitch, you know? It's like, well, I don't even know you.
Yeah.
Come on. It's been 20 years.
This I don't think that I don't care for scenarios like this, and maybe I'll put them in the same category as like what we talked about, the scenes in the movies where people have misunderstandings because they don't share
they don't
stuff.
stop and
yeah,
talk for a moment.
I just hate this shit. Like this next like 6 pages or something. I was like, I didn't know. I didn't even want to read the polling and the whole like, I need you to make a life-changing decision right now, and then like the back and forth. I was like, I'm not feeling this.
It can totally work, but it has to be earned. It very carefully built up. And what we really needed was just way more of why would he care about her enough to do any of these insane things?
Quimby was built, but they had only given us a tiny glimpse at any
Their
connection to
relationship.
her.
Yeah, because we just met her.
And therefore, yeah, exactly.
I don't think that it's like an inability of mine to act
No,
in
you're stunted.
crisis scenarios.
You're stunted.
But
We're all a little fucked up if we're doing this.
But the kind of
2 years
scenario
later.
that they're proposing here, where like, yeah, you just have to make this. You can only choose this, or you can only choose this, and you have to do the in this instant and stuff. I'm like, man, That'd be a real pickle. I'd have to sit. I'd have to grab one of those theater seats for a while. But you guys hang tight.
Yeah, put on my thinking cap, and you guys just take 5, get some lunch.
You seem to like hamming it up, so go ahead and ham it up.
Yeah.
The thing I'll say in defense of this scene is that it didn't last that long. It wasn't like
no, we're talking about it too long for sure. Yeah,
it wasn't like
it's just a critical part of the story.
Yeah. Even for the moment it lasts, there was no tension.
There's a great line here. Gotham is a stage, and the real celebrities are the villains, not the false idols like Sophia Valentine. This is said, I believe, by the producer, waiting in the wings. The producer is also someone that we don't really get any real backstory or motivation for.
This is how you would introduce a character in Batman issue 300 in 1976.
Yes.
Like 4 years from now, they'll come back and they'll do something like that's. Unless this becomes that universe, that's not what we have.
Yeah, if this is an idea for their next installment or something, because I know that he's working on a third or I guess fourth at this point. But yeah, if he doesn't come back, it'd be like, well, it should have just been Starlet alone at that point, because they have their little conflict or whatever, but it's so brief and not really, again, like essential to the story. But I did like that line and just that observation, the commentary about like, the rich people will fawn over Bruce Wayne and he'll get all the girls and whatever, but like the real celebrities are all these crazy characters that they've got to do horrible things. And that's not much
dress
different.
Up like the Joker. We know that.
Yeah, me. It's not that much different though than commentary on American life of like we watch all these Netflix, HBO documentaries about serial killers and stuff. And so I just thought for that character, in my opinion, to be pretty much irrelevant or underutilized, he had one of the best lines in the whole book right there.
I also like the seeming awareness of like the levels of even the villain game. You're not an A-list villain. You're sub-level at best.
You have no crew.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into the next episode here.
Is celebritize a word, or am I making that up?
Well, get on that quick because someone's going to take it. If
Could
it's
be
not.
now, yeah. Next, we have a flashback. Harley meets Joker for the first time after Jack's accident. So this is the first time Joker is actually talking to her. Heavy Two-Face vibes. He's using we pronouns. They're playing a little card game that leads to a little keepsake for her. He gives her another card that says, don't give up on me yet. I don't know if I'm remembering this from the first time I read this book, or was that actually in, like, Curse or something? Is it new to this?
Remember.
Okay, it could be new to this.
Celebritize is a word. I looked it up.
But I thought that was cool, giving the little diamonds that she wears on her gesture suit some origin, in the same way that they did the Puddin' stuff earlier, or the Lou and Bud. I mean, it's really cool to me, taking a very dense story with a lot going on, and taking these moments to slow down, give us a little world building stuff just for the two main characters and keep him relevant in this
I like
story.
The way that they use flashbacks in this. It's like it's all very fluid.
And it gives you a good window into her state of mind that she's constantly kind of bouncing back to that. She's still reeling with his death and who she is apart from that.
For sure. This is how she's living. This is what occupies her mind all
It's
the time.
easy to forget that he's dead because we see him every fourth page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's by design, really, because he was one of the best parts. They got fucking statues and action figures and, hardcover editions with his face on them.
Yeah.
Like, we want more of it.
I'm done with the Joker. I don't need any more Joker. But
I know
whatever.
you don't. I get Joker fatigue sometimes, too. That's why we did all the fucking ninja episodes earlier this season.
Yeah.
I was like, I need a break.
There's some Poison Ivy stuff because we're about to get to her again.
Speaking of which, Ivy checks in on Harley after her encounter with Starlet, advising her not to compartmentalize her personalities like Bruce and Jack had done, which was sort of the downfall of both of them. One dead, one locked up. Tells her to embrace the chaos, be all of those things. She mentions a couple times, like, I'm the supervillain, I'm the psychiatrist, I'm none of them, or all of them, I don't really know. But I like Ivy's advice of, like, you are all of those things. You're not just one version. We have the person we are at work and the person we are with our parents.
On our World of Warcraft forums, all that stuff.
I'm a
Not
giant
me,
ogre.
but that was one of the best, like, big picture moments of any of these in White Knight of, like, here's a theme for the whole thing to kind of like think about and chew on while you're reading the specifics of the story. Like, it's about that.
And again, testament to the writing, you're getting another character who's barely in this, but is removed enough to have that perspective and be objective and say, look at all the main characters, guys. Do you want to keep going down that road, or do you want to break the mold? Much like I said about the producer, Ivy is actually used very well in this scene.
Yeah, similarly to Bruce also, that not so much in the earlier scene, but in this where she's just here to help. Like, she hardly seems like a villain as much as just like a nice, caring character.
Yeah, her first appearance seemed weird, but this is more like what I would expect.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're friends, and I'm just telling you, as someone who's not
And
really
they're
involved
not,
in this.
too, because it's like, what the fuck are you doing here kind of thing?
Yeah.
I don't want Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on my door right now. Go away.
Good advice could
You know.
come from anywhere, though. Yeah. And I'll take this with me into real life, too. Thank you,
Yeah.
comic book. Good line.
Thank you, Banana.
So Duke shows up. As Ivy kind of vanishes, they deduce that Sophia's Lifetime Achievement Award is bound to be the grand finale here. There was some mention from Starlet about like an audience, and they're just kind of going, oh, well, if she said that to you and then this to me, okay, it's got to be that. And that's kind of what the whole thing's building toward. She goes home and puts her twins to bed, and this is juxtaposed on the left and right side of the page with a cool Starlet suit-up sequence. Instantly, at the end of it, it goes like, do you smell gas? And this is wild. Like, the whole apartment complex explodes
Backdraft.
at Harley's place.
Don't spoil it. I still haven't seen it. I'm about to see it.
Damn it. It was almost 30 years ago.
What?
You haven't seen
I haven't
Backdraft?
got around to it. There's a lot of movies.
Oh, man. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Bruce sees this on the news and very casually escapes prison with his words. He kind of twists the guard's arm like, yo, how many times have I fucking
Cleaned up your mess.
exactly bailed you out?
part is badass.
You're like, let me see Jason Todd, which is interesting because at the end of Curse, when we meet Jason Todd, I got the impression he's kind of like in the military. I didn't get the impression that he was the warden of the prison.
Well, my thought was that Batman brought him in so that he would be the warden of the prison because he's the one person who could do the best job of making sure Bruce didn't escape.
Interesting.
So like he was in the military, and now we don't see any of that middle
I
stuff.
appreciate your headcanon on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah. That's cool. I was in a similar boat where I was like, I don't see how you get here from there, but
But I like it.
here we are.
And I'm
That's
pretty
fine.
sure I'm not completely making that up. I think that was the implication.
No, it's
They
good.
just didn't do any of the work and of them showing you that.
They probably did and just cut it. Like, we don't have time for this shit. There's too much.
I like.
We got all this great producer stuff.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, like, oh man, more movie stuff. I liked, because I was also fooled, that the cover for this issue has Jason on the front.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, why would you
Why?
do this? Like, why would you? I mean, granted, it doesn't end up being really a thing. Like, he gets duped and Bruce takes his costume. But why would you do this? Only to read through it and be like, you clever bastards, it wasn't Jason in the suit anyways. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of spoiled something and also tricked me at the same time.
In hindsight, it just feels like another, like, I don't know how much longer I'll get to do this. I would like to draw my version of the Red Hood, please.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just going to draw this guy. Yeah.
I thought that was cool that he gets his one-on-one with Jason, and then he just like takes one step back, hits the fucking button on the wall, and locks him in. He's like, sorry.
Well-
You know, he doesn't have to beat up any guards or anything. He just puts on Jason's helmet,
Yeah.
his jacket, walks right out.
There's a whole lot of things that I think would suck about being incarcerated, but a lot of it is just you're being kept a place against your will, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think
And-
that's something you don't appreciate
Yeah.
until it happens to
Yeah,
you. You're
yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh, that's
Like-
why this is so
Sure.
bad.
The small quarters, the confinement and stuff. There's many reasons in which it would suck. But I was just thinking that that's funny that for Bruce, that's not even a factor. Like, why would he actually even care? He's just like, I'll just spend my time. I actually could leave whenever I want to. Everybody leaves me alone. Yeah, this food could be better. But I'm also going to go home to this place when I get done. So whatever, I'm just biding my time. But the
Yeah.
fact that he's like, so not, that just wouldn't be a factor for him. Like,
Yeah.
any of the things that would normally bother a person about being locked up are not.
I finally have time to brood or having to go out and do
You're like,
things.
damn, yeah, seriously.
What I like about this, and I guess this is sort of a backhanded compliment because I don't think you can have Batman free during the climax of the story and just sit it out because it'll be good for her. So I don't think he should have escaped. But in a lot of stories, you'll be like, I could break your neck in 10 different places, but I choose not to because blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like, I could escape, like Ra's al Ghul, I could escape from this fucking cage you've got me in the Batcave in 100 different ways, right? But they don't show you do it. Well, in this, they show he's been there for 2 years. He seems to be pretty well acclimated to it. And then he sees something happen to someone he really cares about and slips out so fucking easily that it's kind of funny. Is one of those action speaks louder sort of things of like, it reveals a lot about where he's at in his life and then
Doesn't do anything.
doesn't need to be out, we find. But
They did a pretty good
Yeah.
job of covering that up because I didn't even think of that until you mentioned it, that like, oh, he's out and about during the end of this. He's just,
Yeah.
he's getting the little gift for her set up at his
Yeah, yeah,
house. He's
exactly.
like, oh, let
I
her
gotta
do
clean out
everything.
this apartment. I can't be bothered with these fucking half-rent villains, you know?
I think it's interesting too, just the way that this universe plays stuff different. That he goes to the apartment ish, and he's standing across the street, and he's between these two buildings with like Bullock, and then just that everybody knows who everybody is in this.
Yeah.
And so like he's not Batman masked up having a gruff voice talk with Bullock. They're just two dudes who know each other, and he's like, yo, man, you really can't do this because you'll just get in more trouble. It'll make your sentence longer. Like, probably don't, bro. And he's like, yeah, right. Thanks, Bullock, buddy.
No problem, Bats.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
Let me dive into that here. So the end of book 5 here, emotionally, to me, is really the climax. Harley is in the fire. She finds one of her babies, Bryce, and tries to get the hyena, like, here, take his fucking, shirt in your mouth or whatever, take him out of here, save him. And the hyenas kind of rub noses together, and Lou runs back into the fire. So she takes her baby and gets out with Bud. So there's a beat where Bruce does watch from across the street. He's about to go in, and Harvey's like, don't, you're going to double your sentence. And at that moment, we see Lou jump out through a window with Jackie, the other baby. There's a good build of suspense here while she's like with the EMTs and the cops and stuff, and is like, somebody going after them. What the fuck's going on, My baby's still in there. And that really hit me. So Jackie is rescued. The EMT puts the oxygen on. I'm like, okay, he's fine. And she like holds the baby, and it's like, oh, thank God. And there's this big sigh of relief. And then you just hear this little whimper from off screen, and Lou cries and dies there.
That really got me, actually. They don't linger there for very long. In the next one, they don't like come back to it, but
Yeah.
I've felt all of that
I didn't,
pretty strongly.
I didn't care about the hyenas at all.
That makes me sad. I actually cried too when I read it.
I just like the scene because it's the first time you see her really care about her kids, both in the sense of seeing that, but also neutralizes her own self-doubt of like, am I even a good mom? Do I even care about them? My favorite times is not
Yeah.
being around them.
Yeah.
And like when the chips are down, she does care.
That's true.
fundamentally.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. R.I.P. Lou, he was a good boy. Book 6 opens with a flashback of Harley stopping Joker from killing Jason. They get in a fight. He actually slashes her leg with a razor blade as she's kicking him, and Lou attacks and bites him for it. She leaves them to go find Batman and has the hyenas protect Jason from Joker. So earlier, I can't remember if it was book 1, I think we were like, so is Jason dead? We couldn't quite tell. And like, he obviously shows up later, but this kind of finally gives us the full story. I like it because again, they don't go back to, the dead dog. They don't pick up right there, but they do give another sense of like his loyalty, selflessness, toward her, which I really like.
I think some of this was retcon though, because I feel like the way it was presented in the others was just like she couldn't handle it and she left. Where in this, it's like, it's not that, it's like, this is wrong. I'm going to go get help.
I do think you're right. They probably gave themselves a little bit of creative liberty on this to...
Makes her a little better,
Yeah.
a little more moral, a little more heroic.
In listening to their interview about it too, is like, how do you make her a sympathetic character? Because, in comics, it took so long, even after she split from him, to change the direction of her character and make her a little bit more of a hero, where that Joker fucking is a mass murderer, not even a serial killer, but a mass murderer.
Those hyenas probably mutilated a lot of people, maybe even killed them.
Yeah, and so that, I mean, that takes a decade to change the course of her character. And so in this, we know it's the Joker, but I think they do a pretty sanitized version of it in all of these books of like, yeah, he is, but he hasn't fully gone that far yet.
Well, even her, because they just split her into two characters. Like, here's the bad one. Here's the one who did all the really bad stuff. And she was the good one before that. And then she ducked out when things got too crazy.
That's true.
Yeah, she was the
That's a good
more
point.
wholesome.
We were just having adventures.
In it for fun with Mr. J character. This is like politics and like rebranding people, you know, to make them more
I'm going to
palatable and stuff.
split you into two politicians.
Yeah.
All right, so back to present day. Montoya takes her off the case because now it's too personal. And Harley goes to the GTO where the 89 Batmobile is waiting, and she gets a new suit from Batman.
So what is Batman doing right now, not in prison, suited up, giving her a costume?
And
Why
not helping. Yeah,
why isn't
that's
he
what I'm
back?
saying.
Why isn't he back in prison already?
Like, they can have the escape just to show that about him.
Yeah.
And then he gets there and like, oh, well, I can't do this. But then have him to go and, you know, all right, I got to get in my fucking cosplay room and stitch this up for her.
Yeah.
Is that Batman down on the corner sitting on his car?
No.
He's in prison, isn't he?
Nah, it couldn't be. Yeah.
Yeah, if it left off where it did and you just had the talk with Bullock and then you just didn't see him again and assumed that he went back to jail,
Yeah.
that would have been cool. But to see him in this part, create some other scene where she gets a present.
Exactly.
Or a
That's what I was
package or
thinking. Get it from
something.
Leslie. Get
Yeah,
it
just
from
anybody,
you know,
really.
Is Lucius in this? I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody, some other resource that he
Bruce
has.
asked me to give this.
Because
to
how
you.
much time has passed? Like, did he go back to prison and then escape
Return
again?
the costume and the motorcycle.
Yeah, or has he been out the whole time and he just kind of comes and goes when he wants and nobody really cares?
Well, here's my question to you guys. So she's presented with the new suit from Batman. We get the black and gray version of the Jester suit. So it's sort of Harley Quinn meets Batman. It's not even like Batgirl or Nightwing that are different. It's very much modeled after him. What do we think about the new design?
I like it. Batman aside, darker colors make sense in a dark urban setting.
Yeah, they made jokes before about like, oh, I can't sneak around. You're wearing bright fucking red.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
that's cool. I mean, on the other hand, her whole
Belt and
hammer
hammer.
holding
Yellow.
system. I mean, one, it is more of a nod to
Batman
Batman's
colors,
costume.
yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, there's that. But also, like, I want you to
got
blend
no-
in.
no
Aside
cape
from
to
this
hide it.
neon belt, yeah.
Did you see that hammer just fly by? I don't know what.
But I do like all the
John
other.
Cena is just invisible.
One thing that was always cool, I think, about her costume, and same with Catwoman's, at least early on, was that they're just like, it's so tight, it's impossibly tight. There's no pockets, there's no seams, there's no nothing. Somehow
Yeah.
it's just right on your skin, no underpants. This being
And the
like
black is
that
very
again.
slimming, guys.
Yeah, and I also do like, I like a collar and I like a hood, and she has that like Spider Gwen hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
hood
very
gun.
Spider-Gwen-y.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I just like the maskless suit. Like they're treating
Yeah.
comic suits and not going other directions that we've seen where she's Suicide Squad style or
Just wearing clothes.
New 52,
Some neat
you know,
clothes.
stuff where it's a total different person. It's just like, no, this is Harleen dressed in the suit. I think that's cool.
I also like the colors because it ties back into the golden age of cinema. Everything's
True.
like no color, no saturation, other
Yeah.
than the belt.
Later on, when they have the fight and she pulls out the hammer, there's kind of a click, 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 like it, you know, it's shorter and then it can extend and it turns into a bigger hammer.
Yeah.
But, and I had to stop and look at it, and he did change it in slightly other ways. But at first glance,
You'd be
I
the
just-
guy to look back at other pages and be like, was that hanging there?
Yeah. No, I did, because I was like, all I can tell is that this thing just got longer. Like,
Yeah.
You guys got a
doesn't-
little tiny
like,
hammer
yeah,
head
the
on.
head, yeah, the head isn't any bigger. I was like, this
It's
isn't
still a
more
golf club.
Yeah, it's not more formidable. It's just longer. But it turns out that like in that one, the ends look just kind of flat and pancaked, and then in here it looks more broad.
I had the same thought.
Yeah, like this doesn't. This isn't any better or cooler or stronger or threatening or anything.
But that addresses a long-running Harley Quinn thing where she'll be in a situation and then just have it. She didn't bring it.
Yeah.
She didn't have it
She
before.
left it over
Why
there
were you
behind the
holding
wall.
that?
Like just out of nowhere, it's like, they could be having lunch and get ambushed or something, and then it's like, well, time to fucking bust skulls. I have my mallet now. And so I did like that they addressed that because I've seen it just magically appear before.
That's funny.
At the film festival, Harley wears Lou's collar, and that's something actually I did on tour. I wore my cat's bracelet after I had to leave tour and put him down and then go back on tour.
Observational critique. Murphy's cover says Lou, and hers just has an L on
The
it.
L, yeah.
They did not get
And
on the same page
The
there.
bell rings, so they're not. There's another "you suck at sneaking around" when Duke shows up, and I want to address this running gag because she says the same thing to Batman in this, and she says it in Curse when he visits her pregnant, like on the rooftop. But Duke would have no knowledge of this at all. I mean, maybe that's the point of realizing that it's hypocritical, someone else calling her on the thing she calls somebody else on. But for me, it just seemed like one character talking like another character and therefore talking like the writer. Because there's another thing where Bullock says to Bruce when they're outside the fire, I'm good with bending the rules. After Harley had told Duke that he, quote, likes bending the rules before the Starlet fight. And so there's numerous examples throughout this book of characters who did not witness anyone else saying that, saying the same thing verbatim in another context, and I find that really odd.
I think that would be a challenge to like create a world, and even if it was a dozen characters, all of which you, not in this case, but say you're a novelist and you conjure all these characters, and then all of them are going to think and speak differently than you, but you need to be able to channel that whenever you need to to present their character. That would be freaking hard.
Biggest deterrent for ever even attempting fiction before. And then it wasn't until diving into it a little bit more. One, just doing this show for 2 years has been so educational, but then watching some YouTube stuff and reading some other just like script outlines, and you're going, oh, okay. The characters are chosen in the story for a specific reason. They do a certain thing in the story. They serve a purpose. So when two characters are placed in a scene together, the audience should know what each person essentially wants to get out of that scene automatically, and so once you kind of establish their motivation and you already have built their personality, well, okay, then it becomes a little easier to avoid those things. Because before I was really caught up in that, like, how do they do it? These magicians come up with, like you said, how can you have a dozen characters and speak in different voices? Like, oh, because you all know their unique point of view and backstory and what led them to this moment. So
I think a lot of them, too, though, even great writers, the characters don't have a realistic array of voices. They have a realistic array of, they say things according to their motivation.
And a tone for that story.
Yeah, but they all, often even great writers, they all talk kind of the same. So much so that when someone is introduced of like, this is a young person, so they speak in slang, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Because
Frank Miller?
Yeah, now they're the one person who doesn't talk like every other character does.
I don't shiv.
I don't shit, man, get that pipe.
Spud likes it.
Sometimes you have a narrator, like a real narrator, and then other times you just have like
Inner monologue.
the book voice telling you about the scene in which no one is describing, so it's just the book telling you about the thing. But you're right, because then you'll have Denise and Tommy, and they all
I haven't read that one.
No, I'm just making up
I know.
names that are all more or less the author's tone,
Yeah.
umbrella-ing everybody, including the book itself.
So in the climax here, the final scene, the producer hijacks their radios, takes responsibility as like the puppet master, like, oh, I got Quimby assigned to the case. I blocked the search warrant, kind of James Bonding the whole thing from off screen. Harley runs into the control room to catch him and finds the whole crew there dead. He can't have her as one of his new villains, which is sort of alluded to, I think, twice in the story, that really his ultimate goal is creating these new villains. She would be one of them and Quimby would be one of them, and obviously Starlet was the first, and kind of restore this
What
chaos
makes
to
Gotham
Gotham.
special.
Yeah, he wants
Exactly.
to make a new rogues gallery.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we know that, but well, how is introducing Quimby to his murderous former nanny going to make him, or how is doing this stuff to Harley going to make her into a new villain? And also, if you wanted to make Quimby a new villain by killing Harley, you can't have Harley as a new villain. So, like, I just didn't follow exactly how he was going to achieve this.
Well, in this scene, to me, it seemed like more like the reveal that he doesn't want her to be a new villain. He wants her to be the new hero, which again is like the overall thing of the book.
Yes, that's the turn here. Like, okay, well, if I can't have you as my new villain, then you're going to be my new nemesis.
To me, it felt more like that was the goal all along.
Well, she was on the fucking...
He does say that
Corkboard or
he
whatever.
originally was thinking that she'll be part of this villain lineup.
Oh.
Yeah.
But after stuff started to play out and a couple unanticipated twists and turns, that now he sees her as the new hero in Batman's absence, and he's going to continue making these villains.
Yeah. So Quimby presents the award to Sophia, and both of them amazingly just, yeah, let's carry on with this public procedure. You know, I think about like The Dark Knight, where like, okay, it's been a threat on the mayor's life. You need to prepare for this in some way. Sure, we can carry on with it, but like, we're not involved in their thought process going into it, so we don't know what they've done to kind of prepare for this.
Make sure nobody's
Like,
in the control room.
In V for Vendetta, where he like takes all the people in as hostages with the masks at the TV station. But then if
Yeah.
everybody was like, but let's still keep broadcasting the TV, baby. Like, don't worry about that, though.
So Starlet interrupts here and throws knives at Sophia, but in the way a comic book would, she pins her to the wall with her dress, right? The knives pin her clothing, and then she threatens to kill her instead of killing her with those initial knives. And Starlet takes Quimby as a hostage via a trapdoor in the stage. Basically, like, fucking run away with me. And he's like, you're fucking crazy. Like, I don't...
Hey, no, not again. Remember the other theater?
This is not happening. And then Harley finds them and uses that extendable mallet that you mentioned. And this is where I wondered, because, you know, she's like, oh, yeah, a little gift from a friend. And then I thought, wait, where is he? They were just talking, you know, like, and then there's a great shot here. They're facing off. Starlet throws the knife, and she just fucking nonchalantly, just expertly deflects this knife, bounce right off of her, and she's ready to fucking keep fighting like, you know, that was nothing. And then turn, and it deflected right into Quimby's chest, like just fucking right in the heart.
That affected me.
Yeah.
And I didn't particularly love the character. I didn't hate him either, but just like, it caught me off guard.
Yeah, me too.
That shot was so like, he's like,
Just visceral. And,
Yeah, yeah.
ugh, yeah. Yeah, I really love that part. And I can't even think of, like, it's a thing you might have seen in a movie here and there of, like, you deflect a bullet and, oh, shit,
It goes
or
wrong.
something like
well,
that.
usually it's after the conflict is resolved.
That you find out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
then there's the lull
Quimby?
after or something.
Quimby?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the main villain died, and then like one of your main characters reveals they had been shot after all, or something, you know. But yeah, this was very well done.
Well, I think it's also kind of one of those, like, they're exploring the cost of all this property damage in a real life Batman and stuff. But a lot of everything is like so focused on like
Hero versus villain.
yeah, the characters and the fight and stuff like that. We're being presented with this, like, all of these super scenarios in which life and death decisions need to be made instantly over and over, and,
Yeah.
and somehow they're well suited for this. But as good as you could be with your ninja knife slap, still consequences or still collateral damage or still, like, you go from one panel like, oh, badass, to, oh, fuck around. You
Yeah.
know, like, damn it.
Well, it's one of those things about Joker being a good foil for Batman because he's not afraid of the pain. You know, like, you can't punch your way out of this situation. She's done all of this work to improve herself and is still taking a big fucking risk every time you suit up and go out there and do some crazy heroic shit, you know? It's just built in.
Yeah, this struck me as, like, legitimately tragic for a character
Yeah.
that I don't like, whatever. But they're exploring a lot of human stuff here, and maybe I felt more human in reading it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when this, I just totally unexpected and not just unexpected like, oh crap, I didn't see that happen, but oh crap, and that was really sad. I thought that this was just going to be some you're going to battle, you're probably going to win, and then something with Quimby, and it'll be resolved. Like I didn't.
Yeah, they took the most developed new character and made him the casualty, and that's.
He's so nice in his death scene and stuff. Even as he's like fading away, like he's so like, don't worry about it. It was cool to hang out with you. Keep your costume. It looks super cool.
Well, what's interesting about the way that is framed is on one side you have his past and his present both consoling him, both taken by this tragedy. You know, Starlet on one side, Harley on the other. He's not just like an innocent bystander, but becomes the motivation for them really facing off right after this. And so I think that just gives it more weight of like everyone in the scene, no matter which side, is affected by this.
That top panel where I mean, Harley hasn't known him for all that long or anything, but she feels for him.
She feels a connection, a
they
similarity.
both kneel next to him, and it's kind of powerful too because Starlet is like screaming, and Harley is just sitting there. I don't know,
but they're both really affected by it.
Yeah, these rivals, these rivals coming together for a moment because of this, mutual compassion, and then
I think that works a lot better than like the lull in the Neo fight earlier. That scene was great because it was very like Kill Bill 2, and then the little kid walks in.
Yeah.
But this one seemed like a more like, I mean, no question, very legitimate. Like, we kind of both did this. We both had a part in this directly happening.
And we just like criticized a little bit, like the introduction of the character Ethel and all that stuff and the tension of that scene. And so while it didn't work for those scenes, all the groundwork establishing their relationship does work for this scene.
Yeah, we know enough of her motivation for this to work. We just didn't get enough of her kind of getting under his skin now to make him turn as well. But yeah, this is very well done. Quimby does die, and when the cops show up, Harley instinctively puts her hands in the air, which I think is hilarious. Bullock gives her a set of keys with the Batman keychain on it. That's kind of what we were talking about, what could have been done with the suit of like, hey, from a mutual friend, And then Leslie leads her to her new home. Have we seen this particular building in the other stories? I wasn't sure. Okay.
Because I felt similarly. I was like, where is this place that they all know about that I don't know about?
Fuck, I should have reread those other two books.
Damn it.
There's a whole comic series just about this building. It's really nice.
Damn.
And then inside, there's a gift box waiting, and there's a new baby pup.
I hope it had holes in it.
And that's very...
That's what I thought. Yeah, I was like...
I questioned that for a second, but I was like, oh, Leslie just walked them in, so she was just there. Anyway, yeah, that was a very, very nice ending to me.
How do you guys feel about...
anime?
No, does replacing an animal with an animal...
That seems unhealthy, honestly.
Help you?
Not
does that help you?
Because I know everyone has done it. I don't eventually, but to do it right away.
Yeah, what kind of time frame do you think that there should be?
I will answer this in two ways. The first of which is funny. George Carlin talking about how the best thing about when your dog dies is if you pick out a dog that looks exactly like your old dog, then you don't have to change your pictures around your house or anything. He said just throw them up on the counter and say, give me another one of these. So that aside, I totally agree with you until 4 years ago, because I had to put my cat down on that tour. Strange that I just mentioned that. Maybe less than 1 month later, one of Ange's friends was really trying to give us her cat because where she lived didn't allow him, and he was stuck with her old roommate, and it was just this weird situation. She's like very insistent, and we were like, would you want to like come over and you can bring him with and see like how the dog interacts, whatever. And they came over. They had all of his food and his stuff, and they left. I'm like, what? he was just like in the first 5 minutes on my lap, and he's been on my lap for fucking 4 years. So like it actually was very, very helpful. We didn't feel like he was replaced. I didn't like call him the same things or whatever, but it was, it does heal your heart a little bit.
I just think it's one of those interesting things because we don't all, like in your case, sometimes I think that life presents us with stuff that might expedite something that we like. Otherwise, I would have waited a little bit longer, but this opportunity came around.
These people left him here.
That's okay. Yeah, maybe that's how it was supposed to play out. Granted, in this story, Harley doesn't go to get a new hyena. It's given to her.
It's left in her house as well. Yes.
And I was just thinking on my own, like, it's
I want to know what she's going to name it.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me when stuff is clearly so significant and also so replaceable or something.
Yeah, the worry or the danger is that it prevents you from processing or dealing with the loss in the first place, which it doesn't have to do.
Yeah,
but that it could or that it will.
Sure. If your parent passes away, we don't go to the parent store and get new parents.
There are so many elderly people with no one.
Yeah, that's true. You can,
I think it's a little weird, but it's also at the same time, I mean, there are just so many pets that are put down all the time just because they've been in the shelter too long or that they need a home. And if you do have more room in your home and more love to give, then it just, again, before I had seen how it can work, I was skeptical. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a wrong answer. It would be as individual as the individuals.
It's a really indirect way of telling me I'm right this time. I don't know if that counts.
Well, I think you're wrong, but not because you're wrong. But I kind of think it's because we don't get better. We just get more used to whatever the new situation is, and we get like tougher. Because eventually you just keep going and stuff keeps happening, and then you die.
Yeah, like we can't catch up.
Kind of, but I mean that's just what it is. Getting a new animal right away or getting a new hyena right away, it's not bad because
it's just one possible scenario.
Yeah. Give it some time, absolutely. Give it some time. I'm not saying like go fucking window shopping. You don't want like a rebound girlfriend the day you break up.
Lined up right away.
It's a little much. You gotta process some of that shit.
Amber and I are banking on cloning technology being a thing by the time that way we can just have. I'm convinced that Riley is the cutest dog.
Or you can do the other way, which is just hope that you go first.
See, I always thought that, but I couldn't leave him because he wouldn't understand. Why is he not fucking here? He abandoned me. My fucking last mom abandoned me. God damn it! Like I wouldn't like that. Anyway, off topic. Easter eggs. What do we have?
The photo that Quimby shows, like, yeah, my mom was a famous person too, is a nod to the famous Sophia Loren, Jane Mansfield photo where they're sitting at the table and she's kind of eyeballing her cleavage.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, I am smart. You're right.
You with your
cleavage,
Casablanca and your Jane Mansfield.
All right, I'll drop a couple.
Do it.
At Neo's house, when they have tea, she says, I think this mug is yours anyway. It says Paradise Meadows on it. And I was like, why is that familiar? And I looked it up. It was from the place where they had a hideout together. I believe on the episode Harley and Ivy.
That's funny because
that's totally the kind of shit you would research, though.
It's funny because I recall seeing that and being like, meh.
Mental note.
Yeah, like
I don't care.
Yeah, you put this here for a reason. I'm pretty sure.
Sometimes an Easter egg can just be a thing for the people who get it right away.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Harley's plain clothes shadow. So Harlene's shadow is the jester suit at one point when she's walking, just like it's a side profile shot of her walking, which is one of my favorite panels from Harleen. So I was like, that's cool. They did it first, but it's still really cool. I like it.
Well, they do with Batman pretty often.
In the
where
white,
he's got ears.
It did it in White Knight multiple times of like the silhouette
bat
as the
shadow
other person. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'd forgotten that.
Still cool though.
Harley's kid plays with makeup, of course, and we see he's all like Joker colors.
There's
whatever.
It's
a fucking
what do you mean,
baby.
whatever?
Doesn't count. They're not.
I'm just saying because for the first half of the book, I thought they were twin boys.
Bryce and Jackie. I mean, those are pretty androgynous names.
In that same scene, there is a Winnie the Pooh in one of the panels. That's my Easter egg.
The producer's suit and vest, as we see him towards the end, are in Joaquin colors, the orange vest and the red jacket. Ethel's facial scars are sort of this textural quality, like Alicia in '89, Jack's girlfriend was disfigured. And then again, Starlet's background is a cross between 2 episodes of Batman the Animated Series, Clayface as the disfigured actor, and then Baby Doll, who Sean has mentioned as a particular favorite of his and was included briefly in one of them earlier. We saw her. She's the child actor that was like a little person, stayed that way and kind of ruined her life. And he was the one, or she was the one that Batman was very sympathetic to later and hugged her kind of at the end. She has sort of a revenge plot against her original cast members, and that's the theme of that show. And I hate that character and the way she talks, and I've always loved the setup of it. And so, in a way, they took the kind of better part of that episode and interjected it into this with the whole dashing dames and whatever. I think she does have a good motivation, being disfigured by one of the actors and seeing, you know, her life flash by her, but we didn't get it from her point of view at all. You know? So yeah, that's my Easter eggs. Pros?
The colors, as I said, I love this palette. It made it very easy to ingest because I wasn't like, this is fucking miserable. I don't want to be there.
Yeah, I think he really does a lot of the heavy lifting. It's a much more minimalist style from Matteo Scalera. Just a lot of extra work, I feel like, in the colors. That
Starlet's design, I really like that character's design. As I've complained about, and as I've said, a lot of these characters, Batman characters, or comic book characters in general, were dumb ideas, dumb premises, dumb things, and they just stuck around because people made them work.
Yeah.
Her design is really cool because it's a nice mixture of like Joker, Harley Quinn kind of stuff, while being a new take on it, less clowny, more focused on film, but has the same kind of like, almost like Domino, Deadpool's sidekick of like the black and white, but it has that like kind of mimey look. Just I like that design a lot.
Yeah, that color contrast, especially in this pretty bright world, is interesting. Like, it'll stand out for the opposite reasons. It's not extra bright in a bright world. It's kind of, it's devoid of color instead.
It's like the opposite of the Sin City, where like everyone's black and white, but the blood is red or something like that. It's like everything's nice, vivid colors except you.
And I also like that she's supposed to be indicative of an era, and so rather than like creating a costume that's part now and part then and whatever, they're just like, oh, she's a flapper girl. She's a bad flapper girl. She throws, you know,
Bad flapper.
Yeah.
White knight. Bad flapper.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of cool. Maybe it's kind of a gimme, but it's also kind of tight. Matteo does a really good job, like clearly being influenced by Murphy while also being himself. And then the combination of like, I don't know what it would look like if Hollingsworth colored his stuff also, and how much would that make it look even more like Murphy's stuff?
Yeah.
Or what? So it's kind of nice that Stewart, who has been killing it, can do a different take on it and just kind of help set it apart a little more.
And I agree with that, and that's on my list. And you made me think of, though, it is cool that Murphy and Hollingsworth do the covers, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a neat way to just make the whole world fit
Tie it
together.
all in.
You know?
Yeah, totally. We'll just, every once in a while, you'll see another image that will remind you that this is the same universe.
I said before that it reminded me of 90s Disney, and it does. But as you were talking there, it made me think, not only do I want to see this style animated more than I want to see like the Sean Murphy art, I want to see this art animated.
That would make sense.
It looked like Anastasia. That's the movie I saw, which I think is that Don Bluth.
That's not Disney.
Yeah, that's what this design really looks like in this, like the faces and the overall style of it, which is awesome. I mean,
Oh, wait. Yeah, I could see that because Don Bluth did American Tail.
yes.
And the adult faces are, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, way more than Disney. I mean, obviously, because Don Bluth probably pulled some from Disney.
Of course, who
Yeah.
didn't? Yeah.
The interior scenes, like I said, the really fluent use of flashbacks, and not
Yeah.
only how they go in and out of them, but just how it aids the story. It does nothing but benefit it, in my mind. The further exploration of Harley's relationship with Jack and Batman, and weaving her into these past storylines that we thought we knew, but turns out she's been there the whole time and has actually been even more of a critical element than we would have previously thought.
Yeah.
And then I really like Bruce in this. I like him a lot better as like a caring father who also kicks butt.
Yeah. He's a mentor in this more
Yeah,
than
I
anything.
like him a lot.
Mine are very similar. I will start, though, with just saying it's much more consistent than Curse. You know, I had a harder time getting through that because it was so back and forth in tone and timeline and stuff. And this one is way more just a Gotham detective story and character evolution, and I just related to a lot more. So I felt it was much more consistent. As you said about deepening Jack and Harley with flashbacks, as we've talked about it, there's a lot of fan service in all of these, and that's one of my favorite things about it. But the fan service in this story enriches the characters. It's not just there as like, oh, that's a cool Easter egg, right? But it's actually like we are getting origins of Jack falling into the acid, origins of the suit of diamonds on her uniform, origins of their nicknames and stuff like that. I mean, every one of those was done not just make you go, oh, gee, I noticed that. That's cool. No one's ever explained that before. But also to serve the story and where these characters' heads are at, what they're going through right now. So I just feel like that's really expertly done in this. And not, oh, here's a nod to
Remember this?
something.
Remember that?
Yeah.
How well read do you think? Has she been reading stuff like all the while, or was she suddenly like, "Hey, you're gonna write a story"?
Is she a fake comics girl?
Bone up real fast.
I know from listening to Sean's podcast for a few years, as well as listening to 2 interviews that Katana did, one with Sean, one without, on the Bat Force. So I'm not speaking like I know these people, but just from listening to them quite a bit, Sean's comic knowledge seems very limited. Not his experience or anything, but Clay brings up shit all the time that's like, oh yeah, that's like in blah, 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 and whatever. He's like, oh really? Yeah, I never read that. That happens all the time on that show.
So like Sean literally just watched a ton of the animated series, and that's like his thing.
Huge
then started drawing.
influence from the animated series and the Burton world. Like, really. I don't know how much he's kept up on it since then, from the amount of references just, and I'm talking not like all the time, but like accumulatively over years of listening to that show, there have been so many times where, what? Yeah, I never heard of that. I don't know. Really? Someone else did that? Shit, they beat me to it. I thought I was being so clever, you know, like, you know, because they talk about White Knight and this whole series on there, both as it's being made, after it's come out, and just however it ties into those animated episodes. So when Katana is talking about this, she's like, he got me into the character by showing me her episodes of the animated series, you know. And I know she did her due diligence and did some reading on Harley as well, but like my impression is that it is more, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but like more fan service of like, yo, I love these characters from a certain time in my life and this is my take on it, as opposed to I've been following the whole continuity. I know exactly how these characters would. It's like, no, this is my version of this world. I might be off in that assessment, but I think for Sean, a lot of it is a time capsule that he's drawing from versus like keeping up on all the other creators' projects.
That's interesting because my only mini cons would be that despite the fact that it does have some pretty serious moments, I kind of felt like I was watching a cartoon the whole time. Like I felt like I was watching.
Wouldn't that make it better for you? I thought you liked cartoons better than real people.
I mean, cartoony in a Warner Brothers cartoon versus like a serious animated film. I felt like I was watching something a little comical sometimes, further aided by all of the movie stupid villains and all of their lines.
Yeah.
Or even when Starlet shows up and she chucked the knives at Quimby's mom and stuff, and I just kind of felt like how Ben feels sometimes, where I guess it's not something I can quantify, but I think somewhere between the art being like a little more cartoonish than Murphy's, and then these silly characters, and then just some of the stuff that happens, it just felt slightly less serious.
It pulls you out of the reality of it.
Well, let's qualify this, though, because who's the marquee on this title? Batman is really, really small. Okay, this is a Harley Quinn book. I mean, what's the movie we just reviewed? She introduces herself, and makes a joke about taking a dump. I mean, that's who this person is. She is not going to have, and maybe I'm setting myself up for failure because we're following this with Harleen, but in most cases, she is not going to have the same tone as a Joker story or a Batman story. It's going to be more silly because that's built into her.
Sure.
And so having some other characters that are a little more lighthearted would make sense.
But I get what Evan's saying, too, because it's not just like the characters, but it is just something about the way the world moves.
Yeah.
To me, even though you're saying this is that like White Knight was less of that, even White Knight felt like that to me, of where it's like it wants to be both. Mm-hmm. It's still really, really good, but it kind of, that's a hurdle or like a roadblock that it wants to be outlandish and over the top and crazy comic booky, but it also wants to say something real about human relationships. And it does both. Yeah. But the fact that it's trying to do both hurts it a little bit.
Gotcha.
And maybe this one's more to you because the style is even more cartoony, as you say.
Yeah. Sometimes this is a total pro, like manga reference. I'll read stuff where I feel like I'm looking at the advanced version, like the incredibly advanced version of storyboarding. Like it's so easy to follow where I'm like, I can almost see every frame between here and here. That's how clear this is to me. And sometimes, especially in the action scenes of this, I felt I could picture it as a scene from a cartoon. Sometimes it would be very violent, and then other times it would feel like, oh, this is just kind of like a silly little brawl or something.
Yeah, they stopped and had tea in the middle of it. And then later this guy gets stabbed in the heart.
For sure. And it just stops, and like it didn't take anything away from me, really. Just
That's why you call it a mini-con.
Yeah, just mini.
You guys have other cons that you want to bring up?
No.
I don't like the producer. I think the producer is a waste of space. I get it if the point is to establish this universe and like that'll continue on, but I just don't like that villain. I think I both don't like the villain and I also don't like what he did for the story and the spot he took, the time he took.
Yeah, I don't think he was necessary at all. I think if we had that 10% more Ethel Starlet time, then that Quimby dilemma might have paid off a little better. There was very little mention of his actual creating these villains and all this plan. Like, it was so in the background that it could easily go away and just enrich the fewer characters that we do need to know.
It's a little funny sometimes when you consider the motivations of all of these bad guys and like the catalysts for their transformations and stuff like that. You look at this one character and you're like, damn, that's brutal. I could see why you would have flipped.
He loves movies so much.
Yeah, and then you got these other characters who are like, no. Like you seem like a rich hobbyist or something. Like you just seem bored. You're just a bad bored guy.
Yes.
Yeah. And the way that I had written it in my cons, because my first one was the same thing, is I wrote inept villains, because it's not like, oh, my master plan is perfectly rolling out and then, oh no, Batman outsmarted me. It was like, this wasn't a very good idea. You know? It's like I was really counting on Quimby to turn and I was really counting on Harley to turn and oh, shit, we didn't think these through very well.
I don't mind that because him being inept works for it. That's when the most interesting
because
stuff
he seems
happens.
Inept.
Him not planning this well is what leads to the most like emotional and impactful moment for me of this story.
Yeah.
But he just shouldn't have been there in the first place. It could have just as easily been Starlet's poor planning that put them in that situation.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a villain in the animated series that looked like a circus ringleader or something?
Ringleader.
like he wore a
Oh,
jacket.
yes, you mean
he wore like a jacket that had
P.T. Farnham from originally introduced in 1944
that
Detective
guy.
Comics.
I have a question for you guys. I want you guys to refresh my memory, because between the three of us, we should be able to piece together what happened prior in the White Knight series.
I'm gonna make something up.
Shut up. Where is Batgirl?
Or where is Nightwing? Where's any of those people? Where is any of them?
Oh yeah, Nightwing was kind of in it, huh?
Yeah, he's part of the GTO.
You're right.
yeah, they're
he
just
was
not
in
around.
the fucking GTA. God damn it.
They're just not around.
Yeah, I mean that's now
They're
you're now bordering into a criticism of comic books in general, which is like, where was Superman when all this stuff was at? Where was this person? Don't they live in the same like?
Yeah.
There's a bit of you have to go like, I don't know. They were
Yeah.
Captain Marvel. She was in the other part of the galaxy doing other stuff.
You're right.
Yeah,
but that's particularly bad because Batman has shown up in this a bunch, and like, no, she needs the growth. Quimby has to die.
Yeah.
He could have caught the knife. He could have been there.
That whole thing in movies where like I knew that it was critical for your development, so I let you suffer through that torturous event. Like but you'll come out better for this. It wasn't because of my negligence or anything.
Now, normally, if we were not focused on Batman, I wouldn't do the trifecta, but I was kind of struck by how relevant it is. Like, this is really a Batman story in style, even though he's a side character. I mean, Harley, with all the detective shit, you know, the high heel, the dashing dames, all this stuff, she really is kind of the lead on this case, who, even as they're doing shit, does the Batman thing, the Wolverine thing, like, I'm going to break away, I'm going to figure it out, you know? Mm-hmm. And she does. Ninja, they establish with jokes that she's not stealthy, but that she's still very formidable, very dangerous.
Well, the first scene has her jumping out like a 4-story building, the window to land on the ground to go do something. I'm like, that's already pretty ninja right there.
And I thought that they alluded to, like, she snuck up on Batman in one of the other things, and then in Red and White, Batman is like, how are you the only person that hears me?
Yeah.
She has ninja ears, at least.
Yeah.
She ninjas on his ninja.
And then in Trauma, the easy thing or the logical jump off for this is that she is reeling from the decision she made in Curse. Not just that he's dead, but that she had to kill him. But they take it in a different direction and do something I think is deeper and less expected, that she blames herself for even creating the Joker and fostering the circumstances that allowed that to transpire. Mm-hmm. That's way more interesting to me than just on the surface, oh, okay, well, so this happened, she's going to be grappling with that. But when you ask her about it, she's like, no, like, it should have never even gotten to this point because of the decisions I made back then that enabled him.
She potentially bookended that entire, like...
She's the White Knight.
I created the thing that I ended up having to kill. Whoa.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Now, before rating, because I did forget to touch on this, but did we all read the Black and Red and White? Ben, did you? Okay.
I did,
So, yeah, issue 6 of that series was included in the deluxe here, and it is a nice little epilogue to this. And because this does sort of just end really quickly. I thought it was cool. She's having the kids write letters to them, and they're like, what? Or to Batman in prison. And I was like, well, why don't you write one? She's like, oh, you know, that's a good idea. And it sort of just drives home the kind of unique relationship that they have in this version.
The whole collected experiment is just a cool visual experiment.
I don't recommend it, just for the record. There's a lot of subpar shit in there.
Sure.
There's like maybe 4 out of 15 that are really good.
Sure. Well, just visually anyways. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm reading is black and white anyways, black and white and screen tones. So I'm very used to, like, how are you going to create contrast and what's going to be stark and what's going to be not when you're only working with black and white anyways. And then we just talked about Sin City, like, what if you just introduce a single color but selectively, and what's that going to do to aid these pictures? And so I think it's really cool as an exercise, and we're complimenting Stewart's addition to Scalera's stuff here and what that adds. But but here's Scalera all by himself. Look at him pull off this thing. Yeah, that's really cool. But then also, like you're saying, one of my favorite parts was what this adds, the layers to me that it adds to Joker and Harley's relationship. And so then you have her, like, more or less tagging along on what seems like a fun date with a guy that she likes, and she's just kind of there to, like, ensure that nothing too bad happens.
Yeah, doubling down on, like, she was actually a positive influence the entire time.
Yeah, Batman immediately comes in and...
But even before Batman shows up, where Joker's got the knife to the guy's throat, and she's like, come on, aren't we gonna fucking... thought we were supposed to have fun, and he's got his knife to the guy's neck going... You don't think this is fun? But then, when Batman does show up and he's not locking her up, going, I know you gave him the fake gun with the flag that comes out, you know. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm a fucking badass, I didn't whatever. And he's like, I'm on to you. You know?
Also, how did you hear me?
I pop in your window from time to time. I don't always say hello. Final rating. White Knight, Harley Quinn.
4.5.
Nice.
A 3.5 or a 4. I don't know where I land. I feel like it deserves a 4, but my gut says it's a 3.5 for me.
Yeah, I give it a 4. I think Curse for me was the 3.5 because it was like has some of the greatest artwork in it, but I had such an up and down, back and forth with the story, and this one is just, it's very consistent, and for whatever missteps there are in the antagonists, I mean, there's just so much good, the way that they're developing this world and these characters. I'm really on board.
I think what lowers it a bit for me, and as I'm saying this, it's weird because usually I like more mundane stuff. Mm-hmm. Like some of my favorite stuff, like Marvel stuff, is, I think it's Winter Soldier or Civil War, whichever the one that has Black Widow and Captain America in the mall. Mm-hmm. Like that boring stuff, seeing them do human stuff or hanging out in Hawkeye's house and just like talking.
Like those Tarantino scenes.
Yes, that's the best stuff.
Show me some dining table conversation.
So this has tons of that, but some of it I didn't like, and I think maybe it's because I didn't like the action stuff enough either. And I say this again, where to me this is still largely a positive work rather than a negative work.
Yeah.
But it's because there's so much of the mundane, like detective story, psychological stuff, and then the fight scenes
just a little underwhelming.
Yeah, maybe that's the way I would say it. That's what pulls it away from, like, I appreciate the overall work that went into it and why I could see it being a 4 or greater, and why it's not for me.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I would like to see more from this team because I think, I don't know if it's just her perspective or the decisions that they made going into where Harley's going to end up, but I thought this story had a real unique voice, and if they can put her with like a better villain, they got a 5 up their sleeve. I think they do.
I think it's a little hard sometimes where, who knows with their green lighting and the longevity of something, but if you knew that you were going to write an 8-issue thing and you'd be like, okay, cool. Well, if it seems a little short at 4 issues, that's because it's going to be 8 issues.
Yeah.
But then if you get 4 and it's like, well, that's all the time we had and we just had to cram it. You're like, you can kind of tell it comes across like maybe it bit off more than it could chew and it just didn't pull it off or something. And this feels a little like that to me, where maybe they'll get to do something else. But for the moment, this is all we can tackle.
Let's also tip our hat to the fact that she is writing in Sean's universe, and they are teeing up a 4th installment, or a 3rd if you consider this like a spin-off.
About Batmite.
But I'm saying that like they do have the Marvel shackles on in terms of like, all right, you get to tell your story this time, but it fits into our ongoing
You have
thing.
to acknowledge this and acknowledge
So
that.
it's great that they're on model and it's doing all this shit that's like a continuation of it, but they have to acknowledge that they're also just the middle of it and can't deviate too much to where it would affect his future plans. So I give them a lot of credit for the execution on this, knowing that it is sort of one of those with like, you can do your thing, except this, and this, like,
within these confines.
Yeah. So I hope we get more. I know that they've talked about like maybe a Batgirl spinoff or maybe Jason Todd spinoff or something else that, another one of these characters that develops the world, and like, where is Catwoman? Like these are things that Sean's mentioned, like, well, depending on how each one sells, we can talk about what they're going to allow me to do next, So I hope they continue. And I know I said there was a part of me that resented, like, how do we have a whole universe of this? And then nobody even knows this existed. But I mean that in a way of like, let's big up Marini and these other projects
not bring
too.
this down.
Let's bring up Sejic and Harleen too. Let's build on these other things as well, because this has proven you can do that. So more of that, Black Label. I want it all.
This is Robin. Thanks for checking out the Bat Fanatic podcast with Sammy Warm Hands.
All right, that is our show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, if my voice was not conveying the energy, I think the length and the depth of this analysis, this great conversation, should hopefully convey how invested we are in the White Knight universe. So shout out to the whole creative team, both from the spinoff and the OG. We're looking forward to much more and all things DC Black Label. I appreciate your guys' messages and comments and story shares, getting the word out about it. It really means a lot to us. If you got an iPhone, do hit that 5-star rating and give us just a couple sentences of what you like about the show. Really means the world to us. We are going to continue the Harley theme for the rest of the season, picking up with probably my favorite animated series today, HBO's Harley Quinn.